We'll call our meeting to order tonight. Amy, if you could do the roll call for us, please.
Gookin?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
English?
Here.
Evans?
Here.
Ettinger?
Here.
McEvers?
Here.
Do we have Pastor Steve Massey? Is he here with us tonight? We have Pastor Steve Massey from the Hayden Bible Church that's going to give our invocation tonight. Welcome.
Let's pray. Father, I thank you so much for this mayor and these city council members who are serving you by serving this community so well. I think of the peace and safety and the quality of life that speak highly of their leadership and certainly speak much of your grace and your blessing to Coeur d'Alene, and we thank you for that. And it's with gratitude tonight that I ask that you would give them the blessing of attentiveness and knowledge of the issues that they'll be considering. And Lord, give them wisdom to know what to do about it. And Lord, I just pray that there would be courage among them in those times when they must make choices that please some and disappoint some. Lord, let there be joy in their serving, even as those of us who benefit from it enjoy the fruit of their labor. We ask you this in the name of our God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. I don't believe that we have any amendments to the agenda tonight. One announcement that I'd like to make is that on our next presentation, it is not an action item. It is just a presentation. So council won't be taking any action on the Atlas Waterfront update. It's just an update on the process. So we'll move on to that. And then we have Phil Boyd from Welsh Comer to give us the update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. So tonight is just a short project update. I think as the council knows, there's a steering committee associated with the Atlas project made up of city council members, the mayor, city staff, Ignite board members, and we had a steering committee last week, and the mayor and Chairman Hoskins wanted us to provide an update with some of the direction we received out of that steering committee. So I'm just going to give two short updates tonight. One is on the project phasing, and the other one is on the proposed urban renewal district boundaries. So to give everyone kind of a refresher what you've seen before at the Ignite City workshop, this is the site concept. I'll point out a couple of features that you'll notice change a little bit. One is down in the waterfront area here where we have this delightful interior water, and here up in this part of the project where, as you guys know, the area we fondly refer to as Mount Hink, you'll see that there's active fields shown here. In subsequent slides, those won't be shown. It's changed to a natural park, and that was one of the things we heard out of the workshop and from the community during the public meetings. And just kind of the general oversight, the refresher, Celtice Way is at the top. The areas that are shown in red are intended to be commercial, and you see there's some here and one element down here. The rest of it is a combination of residential, townhomes, single family, apartments or condominium flats. And just again as a refresher, that product type was the real estate advisor, Heartland, which is part of our team, as we were moving through the process. That was the product type that they identified as in demand in the market and that would bring a higher residual land value, which is obviously necessary because the big kicker is pulling out that nearly 4,000 feet of waterfront, which is really the prize of this project. But when you take that 4,000 feet out, you have to achieve a little higher density to pay for the property and the development. So that's the background. Moving forward, just a little bit of criteria on what we use for project phasing. The first criteria is minimizing infrastructure requirements. So, right out of the chute, you're trying to minimize the cost of the infrastructure because it requires less upfront capital. And while Coeur d'Alene is a government, and Ignite is an urban renewal agency. The capital is not limitless. So we have restrictions, but we also want to maximize the developable area and the product types to generate revenue. So those are two primary criteria that go into phasing. Obviously improve the public waterfront area, recognize market absorption, and then recognize long-term excuse me, site construction impacts. So you can imagine as the site's being developed, if you live there, it's no fun to have the construction going on right next door. So with those in mind, I'll show you this image, which again is the image I presented in the first one. You can see what has changed is up here in the this northeast corner, it's a nature park. And down here you can see the water is gone. And that's really to indicate that the level of development in the public space initially will not be as intensely developed because of capital requirements. It would be great to go in there and spend many millions of dollars right out of the chute, but that's not possible in the first phase of the project. So it would be, we've named it, or Del Hatch on our team named it Clean and Green. So it will have a trail through it, a paved trail. It'll have a gravel trail through pedestrians, and it will be landscape and irrigated and an enjoyable place to be. And then over time, or as other funding becomes available, the city can amenitize that property. And you'll see that the waterfront is all in phase one, including this western portion right here. And the idea is we can create a loop through here, come back up to the roundabout here. It's got good ingress and egress. The water system is accessible there. We can create a loop for fire suppression. And then probably more importantly, the wastewater actually flows west before it gets turned around and gets pumped back to the east to the wastewater treatment plant. And Mr. Mayor, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask, if the council wants to ask questions as I move.
Sure. Just as anyone has questions as we're going through the process, feel free to have
Bill, I've got a question. So if that, on your starting off on number one, where's the accessibility to the trail along the river?
Good point, good question, and you're segueing for me, thank you. So the other part of phase one is over in this area off of Suzanne. And this is one of the challenges with developing a beautiful waterfront area and making it accessible for folks, and also building a neighborhood. And you can imagine if the neighborhood were built, but there were no parking lot or no access to the waterfront, the public's going to go in, fill up this neighborhood, park on the street, pull their bikes off, go get on the trail. And so part of phase one is to extend Suzanne into this parking lot and construct that parking lot in the park. So now folks can go there, park, go enjoy the park, and access the waterfront. Okay. As you can see, as we develop here, then we start to move to the center part of it as we extend sewer from the west towards the east and continue on into phase two. We would construct that element of the access road, so now we've got a loop. Phase three, and then later on phase four. Phase four has subgrade remediation, which is expensive, and you need to accumulate capital to pay for that as you go. So this is part of the financial plan, is what really drives this phasing scenario.
Phil, I believe Dan had a question.
Yeah, so did I understand you correctly? We're not really going to put a lot of money into the waterfront right away?
Initially, the way that the waterfront is developed is it would be developed to a level that we can afford from a capital standpoint. The council always, what the available capital is out of the URA, the council has the option to look at the amenities, and when you see the final development implementation plan, there'll be a base development, and then there'll be these amenities. Council can look at those amenities and say, gosh, let's go consider other ways to fund that, whether that's a general obligation bond, other availability, funding availability you have to you. But it's a council option, but right out of the chute, it's got a pencil. We don't know that will pass, and our direction is develop a project that can be phased and implemented with the available funding. And the GO bond is not a certainty at this point.
When you say R, who are you talking about?
Ignite, CDA, and the city.
Okay, so this is kind of like the stuff you can afford now, and then if we want like a little lake in there with a wrecked pirate ship. That'll be coming later.
I don't know that the wrecked pirate ship will ever go in.
I want my wrecked pirate ship.
I know you do. I know you've spoken to me about it passionately. I'm not sure it would meet with Bill Greenwood's Parks and Recreation Commission.
It will.
Okay.
Phil, Phil, you might just touch on the shoreline stabilization and the possibility of grants and some other things. There's a lot of moving pieces, and the shoreline stabilization can get spendy.
It is. The shoreline stabilization, and we've talked about that a little bit here before, as we know, or most of you know, or have seen photographs in earlier presentations, there's a fair amount of erosion through here, and one of the primary objectives of this project is to deal with that erosion to stop losing real estate and stop discharging sediment into the Spokane River. We're in the process right now of developing the concepts for stabilizing that shoreline and developing applications for permit. We've budgeted, based on other projects we've completed, about $1.4 million to stabilize that. There are grant funding opportunities out there, and as though that grant funding becomes available, in theory, that money would now be available for other uses. For instance, a pirate ship.
That's good. Thanks, Phil.
Any other questions on that? I'll move forward. So that's the phasing plan. So as part of the phasing plan, we also have to consider how the urban renewal districts may be formed. And it's important to point out tonight that this is a project update. There's actually a formal process that the urban renewal district goes through where they adopt a plan, forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They consider it. If they adopt it, it moves to City Council. So there's a very formal process with a number of hearings associated with it. This was a kind of just to let you know what's going on at this point, and then I think there might be some council action in a future meeting. With the Urban Renewal District, our objectives are considering the URD life, because each of the districts has a term, what their current financial capacity is, consider future valuation, what will be developed increment in the future, how much additional from the base and going forward, and then obviously following the URD expansion and creation rules. So this is a URD proposed map. Just to, again, give everyone their bearings. This is Celtice Way. This tan color up here is the River District. The Lake District is down here, and these are the boundaries of those districts. This is the proposed expansion of the River District, which is part of Phase 1, and this is another part of the expansion over here. The River District has a pretty good amount of financial capacity in it, and when you go into Phase 1, that's where you need your money. So you're spending it here and over here. The Atlas District is a new district, and it would be created and continue into this area. That's where there will be some future increment, and that district has a longer life to it than the River District or the Lake District. The Lake District has the shortest life, so it has the shortest opportunity to generate increment. So there's really no point in expanding that to areas that will generate increment, which is why it surrounds the park. And it also has financial capacity currently in it. So working with Tony Burns and the steering committee and Troy, we started plotting out what these urban renewal district boundaries might look like. Wanted to present them to council to get any initial reactions, and depending on your reaction, we'll either modify them or move them forward through the process. So I'm glad to answer any other questions, Mayor.
We'll go with Woody, then we'll come back to Dan.
Do you know how much time's left on River?
26.
2026?
26, and Lake is sooner.
2021.
So you're thinking that 2021, because they have the money, could do all that infrastructure along the river? Is that the theory it's shown that way?
I wouldn't say all the infrastructure. I would say a portion of the infrastructure. But yes, the park improvements that I described earlier, perhaps a portion of the waterfront roadway through here as well, and the parking lot. And so it would be, the idea on the public improvements is for two primary reasons. One, the council's made the commitment and the city's made the commitment to reserve that for public enjoyment. Well, let's get it out there for use. So right out of the chute to make it available to the public to use in a nice state as opposed to just dirt. That's one objective. The other objective, as a potential occupant of that subdivision, you don't want to look at that and say, I wonder if they're really going to do something there, and you're going to go buy a lot. You want to go there and say, gosh, the park is there, how nice this is. I will buy a lot here. So those are kind of the two objectives and why the Lake District money would be spent in that area.
So the Atlas District would be new
Correct.
from scratch.
Yes.
So as it built, it would generate some kind of, because it's not even in the city right now, right?
Correct. Well, none of this is currently in the city.
Right.
And so the Atlas District, you can loan money between districts. So the River District would loan a little bit of money to the Atlas District. And there's some restrictions on that. A little bit of that money would be used down here in Phase 1. And those are some of the details we're working through with Tony and his board to make sure it's all done high and tight.
So this is like a plan, right? This is what you guys are talking about. I don't remember Riverstone having this big conceptual plan. It was kind of like start some streets and put in the sewer and the water, and then it kept moving. It kept changing with the market over all these years. Is that feasible in this type of a going into it where we're kind of the front guys?
That's up to you. I'll answer that by saying yes, but it's up to you. Moving back to this conceptual plan, this plan is organized around a bunch of design principles, and so it's a solid plan. But you also want the market to drive the plan. And so the opportunity for that to occur is if the urban renewal districts are formed, and the market starts to dictate that, you will have, depending on how this moves forward, tools to consider those things. Again, if you don't want to do something in this area that's great right now, but may damage the other areas over here in the future. So the short answer is yes, as long as you're making sure that the white lines are on the road and you're staying in between them to not damage future phases.
Thanks.
Welcome.
Dan?
Thank you. Phil, could you return to the map that shows the potential urban renewal districts? There you go. So I know that the Urban Renewal Board is concerned with what I have to say, and that gives me immense joy. But this map up here of the Atlas District, is that the whole district?
Not necessarily. It would go this way, potentially, because this is just to give everyone their bearings, this is the Douglas property, also known as the River's Edge development. We have not shown it in this image, but the idea that would be included in it.
So the Atlas District would include how many acres is that next to there? It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's almost the same size. I would say to the Urban Renewal Agency, if I could, that I do want to see a plan, and I want to see metrics for success, milestones. Also have a little concern about the thin strip of green that's right below the two districts, as that may be interpreted as a shoestring. And you want to be very careful about that because that is expressly forbidden in the code.
So on the first point, the plan is moving forward, and I think it's good that they're getting some guidance from the council on the metrics, and I think that's where Tony intends to move it. On the corridor here, which we had that same concern, and their legal counsel looked at this, and I'm not certain the exact criteria that they used in evaluating it, but there was some criteria that they developed and said, we don't think that fits the definition of a shoestring. And we would have to, and I'll discuss that with them tomorrow at the Ignite
Please.
board meeting so you can see what their comment is.
As long as we bring it up,
Yep.
I'll be happy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for Phil? Phil, maybe if you could just outline the process from here on the steps we're going to go, because I'm sure that there's some folks that are going to want to weigh in on different stages, and maybe just kind of give an update on the process going forward.
Sure. So where we're at in our process is, this is part of it right now, presenting to council, getting some feedback. Tomorrow night we'll present to the Ignite board, get their feedback and direction, and then we'll go back and, now that we have a little bit of a comfort level, really start hitting the pro forma and start putting the development implementation plan together. all the financial information, the cost estimates, the maps, the infrastructure concept maps, all those details that are used should the urban renewal district choose and the council agree to develop an urban renewal plan process. We'll be finished with our work mid-July, and then Tony Burns from Ignite will be initiating their process should they decide to move forward. If they do, I think his objective is to finish sometime towards the end of September, October, and then it will be here back at council and through the public hearing process at that time. So I think August, September is when there'll be a lot of public notices.
Woody?
Just something just came to mind. This is all based around urban renewal right now. Is there another pathway? Didn't we talk about some different funding sources to make this work at one time? Can't remember. We can go to the public and say, do you really want this really cool and really with a pirate ship and stuff, and can you get involved? Are we still looking at that?
I guess that is up to you. What we're going to do is provide you the content to make that decision. And as I attempted to explain earlier, we are estimating this initial phase of the public space, develop that in a way that will fit the available capital that we believe is available. Separate from that, we're going to itemize all those things except the pirate ship. But we'll itemize the expense of all those other improvements that you see there. And council will have a number to look at. And now council can say, gosh, we really love all these things. We think it's a really great idea to go to a general obligation bond or whatever sources you have available to you. But what we're trying to do is provide you the data for you to make that decision. And those, you would see that July, August, when we produce the final report.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Phil?
Just a couple of quick things. Thanks, Phil. I appreciate the updated information and sharing that. But to be clear, the expansion plan as you have it, like the Lake District, as it expands, the expanded portion will sunset at the same time as the entire Lake District. It doesn't go on.
Correct.
So there's that piece of window that we have to build that infrastructure for the public there.
Correct.
And the idea is to build that so that the public can utilize it now with the forethought that there could be things added or not.
Yes.
So there's more opportunity for public input, and this could go on into that time frame and that when those numbers are put together. Just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate the information.
You betcha.
All right. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Duncan.
it. We will move on to the consent calendar. Woody?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move for approval of consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 18034.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Amy.
Evans? Yes. English?
Yes.
Ettinger?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes?
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yeah. Motion carried. Now is the time for public comment. Anyone wishing to come forward and speak to the council shall have 3 minutes to do so on any city business item. So anyone will, Susie will lead us off for.
Mayor, I have one question. Hillary is going to be presenting something at the eligibility report. Hope I have enough line there. The eligibility report proposal, and I want to know if I should address my comments now on that, or if I should wait until afterwards, whether or not what I'm trying to say is, will you be accepting comments after her?
We won't be at that time, so you can make your comments
Oh,
now.
you ready?
We're ready.
Susan Snedeker, 821, no address, City of Coeur d'Alene. I have to tell you, I was absolutely outraged and stunned when I saw this eligibility report proposal on the agenda. I feel blindsided. I can't recall reading anything about it, and yet I read that there was some kind of a meeting in February of 2018 with a select group of people. I think that's lovely. As I look at this map, and I realize the public can't see it, it's a tremendous amount of property, all of which is developed. It was developed years ago with not a lot of thought. And frankly, I don't think it's the responsibility of the taxpayers via an urban renewal district to pay for any type of improvements or design criteria for an area that has already been developed. The hospital has been adding and adding and adding and adding for years, which I understand is part of the growth pattern for the hospital. But I don't see why the hospital is, why we are responsible for paying, ultimately paying for improvements and for planning for that area. Should have been done a long time ago. It's already developed out. Supposedly urban renewal is based on blight. There is no blight there. There may be undeveloped areas and very poorly developed areas, but it's not a matter of blight. But back to my original irritation is the fact that this is a huge hunk of property. I was thinking that, gee, when the Lake District expires, all the people in the taxing districts in Kootenai County, not just the citizens in the city of Coeur d'Alene, but all the people in the taxing districts would have some relief on their taxes because those would go back onto the rolls, and maybe some of the areas would be able to, or some of the agencies would be able to amend their budgets accordingly. If you take this giant swath of property off of the tax rolls in the future, and I know you know, this is quite a, it's,
You go right
sorry,
ahead,
Amy. A tacky thing. The area's growing, property values. I have a letter from, our annual letter from Mike McDowell saying this is just the beginning. Next year we're going to reassess. When I think of the amount of money that's generated from this area, it really, it seems to me that it'll put a tremendous burden on the taxpayers.
All right.
So you have to think about that. And before you approve it, I want you to identify the exact amount of income that's coming off of it now. Next year is going to be a different thing, a different story because of the increased assessment and the increase in values in the property. Sherman's another story. I don't want to address Sherman. It's like, but this I think is, it's appalling, absolutely appalling. They couldn't have scaled it down. It's huge. I don't understand it. Have you all looked at this? It was in your packet, so I'm assuming each and every one of you read it. Of course you did. Right? Anyway, that's all I have to say. But blindsiding the public on this is really, that isn't a nice thing to do. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Anyone else wishing to come up and give public comment?
Good evening. Sharon Bosley, 419 South 14th Street, Kootenai Environmental Alliance. Thank you, Honorable City Council and Mayor, for allowing me to speak on behalf of Kootenai Environmental Alliance today. KEA understands that recycling industry has been impacted by the world, with the actions that has taken place in China. Many cities throughout the country are struggling with the same issue. But as a conservation organization, we cannot advocate for the reduction in the types of materials accepted for recycling in our community. The city's own CDA Vision 2030 strategic plan states that it wants to expand recycling programs and facilities with the goal of achieving recycling rates that are among the highest in the nation. KEA is listed as a supporter in achieving this goal. We want to work with the city to improve our overall sustainability for our community. We want to ensure that all of our options have been explored before we go ahead against our vision for a greater Coeur d'Alene. We are concerned about the carbon footprint of sending our recyclables to Tacoma and then somewhere in Asia for recycling. Our recycling can travel up to 6,800 miles to be recycled somewhere in Asia. And how are we assured that those materials are sent overseas are indeed recycled? In the past, single-stream recycling has been sent to China just to weight down boats to stabilize them in getting back to their ports. If there is a modification to the contract to reduce the types of recyclables allowed in single-stream collection, KEA has several concerns that we would like to have addressed before the contract is changed. KEA would like to see language in the new contract to include a time frame to review market changes that would allow for the re-expansion of our recyclable list. KEA would also like to understand who would be in charge of changing this recyclable list going forward. We would also like to see documentation on how the contractor plans to get the changes in the recyclables disseminated out into the community. We understand that the city will incur about approximately $17,000 in increased costs to collect recyclables, but we would like to know how long the city will plan to incur these costs and a time frame for reevaluating this subsidy. Although this is not an increased rate cost to the customers, this is taxpayer money, and we would like to have an idea how long we will take on this extra burden. We would also like clarification about the statement in paragraph 4.3 that would amend the contract stating that the city will pay the disposal costs in excess of $10 per ton. Does that mean if the cost of recycling increases, the city will also have to cover this increased cost? We are glad to know that Coeur d'Alene Garbage has been a good partner with the city, and we hope they continue to be good partners. We just ask that we consider all the options before taking any action with recycling, and we would also like to have assurance that the recycling list will not continue to be reduced. I realize I have a lot of questions in there. I'd be happy to give you a copy of them so you can look them over.
Dan?
Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate what you guys do at the KEA. And you know that, like, a lot of stuff isn't getting recycled now. You commented that KEA can't advocate for any reduction in the list of recycled items. Do you have any documentation or evidence that there are 100% of the recyclable items, I think there's 24 on the list right now, that are all being recycled?
With our current contractor?
No,
or
I mean,
in general?
In general, so you have paper and plastic and all this stuff that can be recycled. And what I'm hearing and what I read in the packet is that basically the only two things that make money are cardboard and aluminum, and a lot of the other stuff is a wash, and some of the stuff just gets buried. So what can you guys do, or what can you tell me about, is that true? Are they burying a lot of it, or are there actually things still being recycled out there?
You know, across the country, this is a problem. Around the world, 40% of the world was sending their recyclables to China. So this is an issue, and I understand that it's a concern for everybody's community. But we do have a MRF, Materials Recovery Facility, in our region that actually sells most of their recyclables to domestically. And although it is of more cost, and I understand that, currently I think Coeur d'Alene Garbage pays over $100 a ton, and to go to this regional MRF, it could cost for uncontaminated recyclables, it could cost close to $126 per ton, and for contaminated recyclables, it could be up to $176 a ton. So I understand there's a bottom line there. But they do recycle 95 to 98% of their recyclables are sold domestically, and 75% of that stays in the region. So we have a bit of a unique opportunity as opposed to other communities. I understand it's costly, and this is your decision. It's the city's decision, and we just advocate for trying to keep the recyclables that we've been able to recycle in the contract.
And I appreciate that in your white paper you said that you don't advocate for a rate increase. That was good. I asked if the items were being recycled, and you replied that they're being sold. So what's the difference between something being sold and something being recycled?
They're being sold to entities that recycle, such as the cardboard in this specific regional MRF so cardboard and paperboard is sold to the farming regions in Washington, where they make cardboard containers for fruit and wine bottles. And the plastic is sold somewhere close in Canada, where they make truck stacking. The aluminum is sold to the Midwest, where they recycle that for cans.
And I did mention that cardboard and aluminum are the only two profitable commodities that are being recycled. One thing I would really like the KEA to help us with is contamination. And I'm pretty sure that you could be more eloquent about that than I could. Can you explain to the public about contamination and how we can make an effort as a city to make our recyclables more valuable by eliminating the contamination?
And that's a good point. I mean, in comparison to what, it could cost 126 per ton versus 176, that's a significant amount. And that is a matter of what you put in your recyclables. And this has been a problem since we went to single stream. People assume that it's, when in doubt, just throw it in the recycle and someone will figure it out, whereas it can be a problem. Plastic bags get wrapped in those, the materials recovery facility because they have all sorts of gears, and people throw in hoses, etc., electronics. A lot of people throw in things that are not usable. And some of the more common things that people just assume are recyclable are paper coffee cups. Because they've been used and have had food products in there, you cannot recycle them. Pizza boxes, again, something that you would assume, it doesn't have much grease on it, that you could recycle it. Again, you cannot recycle that. There are a lot of small, minor things, but then additionally, just rinsing out your yogurt cup is something that should be done. It's going to bring in some contaminants like maybe mice that would be part of the problem. And that's the biggest problem with China right now, is they have reduced the amount of contamination they accept from like 16% down to 0.5%. So they don't want our garbage anymore. And frankly, we need to be better about what we put in our recycle bin across the board.
So you put in a pizza box in your recycle bin, that effectively means everything in it is contaminated.
Well, depends on where it goes. If it goes to a MRF that is sorting it, they can sort that out, but it's considered contamination from their standpoint. So it's a conveyor belt. I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but it's a conveyor belt where they have different mechanisms that kind of sort out, cardboard from paper to glass, and even some really, high tech that will sense different plastics that can blow the plastics in different directions. What is the final product is oftentimes contamination, and so those are things that they don't want to see coming through their system, especially ones that could bind, like a hose or plastic bags or something like that.
Thank you, Sharon.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to come up?
Hi, thank you for allowing us to speak a minute. I'm Suzanne Marshall. I live in Coeur d'Alene. Do you need my street address or not?
No, it's good.
Okay. I just basically second everything Sharon says. We've worked together for months dealing with the recycling issue because it's important to KEA, and it's important individually. And I'm very aware, because I've done a lot of research, that human beings are to blame in a big part because nobody in the country cleans the recycling properly. And that's been the case since recycling began way back in the 50s. And it was the case in the early 1900s when we tried to recycle in different kinds of ways. We're lazy. Anyway, and we have been trying to educate people about how to do that. But we have certain resources that you don't have that would help us do it better. And we've already got ways to do it. So we'd be glad to help with that, I'm sure. But one particular concern is that CDA garbage should continue to take all plastics as contracted. I know it's difficult right now to get rid of them and sell them, but it should be left in the contract that they be able to when they find sources to do it. And there are places you can sell plastics. For instance, there's a company in South Carolina that takes plastic and turns it into graduation robe material. And lots of universities like Notre Dame, Yale, and others use those robes instead of ones that are thrown away or just stuck in the closet. So there are ways to do this, and companies that go under contract should try their best to do their job, which is to fulfill their contract, even though it might take some time and some work. And the reason plastics are a concern is that of the 6.3 billion tons of plastics produced up until 2015, only 9% of them have been recycled anyway, at all. Plastics can take up to 400 years to break down in a landfill. And then when they break down, they can become microplastics, which you may have heard about. They get in the ocean and fish eat them, and it's not good for you. Plastics are also associated with harmful health effects on humans. And so if we can take steps to ensure that plastics are recycled and not left to break down in our environment, and we can then fight this ever-growing health and environmental problem. And I'm sure almost everybody here has seen somewhere ocean animals suffering badly from plastics. So another thing we need to do is to quit using them to begin with, and we wouldn't have to worry about recycling them. So that's a big issue. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Others wishing for public comment tonight? Yes, sir.
Yes, I'd like to get back to the Atlas project and the fact that everything that's ever said about it, nothing is mentioned in the presentations that the current Centennial Trail through Riverstone Park is going to be turned into a 2-lane road. This is going to be totally decimating to the handicapped population, people in chairs that use crutches, canes, walkers.
Sir, just name for the record, please. I'm sorry.
Oh, Lloyd Stewart.
Okay.
Okay. This will be totally take away our ability to use that flat, straight piece of road. Do I need to keep that down? There, go ahead. I belong in the Riverstone community. We purposely moved and had a wheelchair accessible house, total wide doors, raised toilets, lowered sinks, the whole thing. Because we knew we were going to be on the Centennial Trail, we didn't feel that it would ever be turned into a 2-lane highway based road, collector road. And I see up to 10 chairs a day on that stretch of trail. I see then walkers, I see people with canes, I see people taking their companion and or service dogs down to the existing dog park where they can let them get exercise. I realize that you're planning on a swimming dog park down at the riverfront. People in chairs cannot get their dogs across a 2-lane road and down an incline to the river. That's probably a 50, 60-foot drop off of the existing Centennial Trail down to the riverfront trail that you're going to be putting in. But I noticed Mr. Boyd in his presentation, he listed, all the phases. He totally ignored the blue section, phase 5, which does mean tearing the existing trail out. Mothers with strollers trying to get from the apartment buildings down to the park so that their kids can play while the older kids can play out on the trail with their bicycles. This will be an impossibility. So I think you're taking a very large section of the population, about 10% of the population do have disabilities, and cutting them off from access to a trail. Plus, we were sold our houses in Riverstone as having direct trail access. This will be taken away from us. We were also, I went directly to the city after we moved in and went through five departments and got a permit checked off, paid for a permit. 5 different department heads, including legal, checked it off, that give me direct access from my back patio door right to the trail. Paid almost $3,000 to have a hard surface put in there. That'll be ripped out. I just feel that this needs to be looked at further. I'm sure that there's other access points. There's Suzanne, there's 2 on Celtice. I don't feel that you need to put a road down past Riverstone Park and destroy the park. Tonight, there was a wedding taking place. There's weddings every weekend, some during the week. They all go out on the trail, use the river and the trail as a backdrop to take their photos. That won't be able to happen anymore. Today, earlier, there was a group of teenagers playing bocce ball between the trail and the first swell. That'll be taken away by the parking lot and the 2-lane road. I just feel that this is a great disservice to an immense amount of people in Coeur d'Alene, just so that somebody can have their grand plan and use it to sell some property. I just totally boggles my mind.
Just a correction is that isn't a plan. It was a concept that was just thrown out there. None of the council has weighed in on that. It hasn't got to that phase. So
Okay,
it was simply an
well-
idea that was drawn on a map, not anywhere near a plan. None of these folks, these decision makers, have made any comments, decisions. So that's concept. Do appreciate your feedback, though, but just keep in mind that it's concept only, and it's not even close to even a plan yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Anyone else wishing to give public comment?
Council Randy Colbert, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. I'd like to echo what Pastor Massey said. Thank you for your service and your dedication. The gentleman that just spoke, I will testify, I see him there at the park daily. He does use the park in the manner that he says. My suggestion would be, and for you, Council Miller, to give the Atlas Waterfront Project a real name. Personalize it now so that guides the thought process of how things flow together. Integrate Riverstone to the park, to the Douglas properties. The property you purchased, it's spectacular. I mean, you've got a lot on your shoulders to make a decision. It's just a spectacular piece of property. Thank you.
I don't think Kiki gave it the name, but
Just calling it that.
I think we called that just to identify it. But I don't think Kiki ever. I don't think that's your name, is it?
No, it'd be the Miller Waterfront
Yeah,
Park.
yeah, there you go.
So, no.
All right. So next for public comment, please.
So I'm going to also speak to the Atlas Waterfront Project. My name's Kurt Katzer, and I'm a resident of Riviera Walk at Riverstone. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. Generally, I'm concerned about how conceptual plans become reality and the inconsistencies between what was presented to Riviera Walk homeowners and the plans currently available to the public. But specifically, I'm here representing many neighbors and trail users who oppose replacing the existing Centennial Trail along the Riverstone development with a road. Our opposition is based on several issues. The first is road classification. At first, we were concerned about how this road would impact traffic in Riverstone, but after learning it would be extended to La Crosse with a traffic signal on Northwest Boulevard, we see it turning into an extremely busy collector road with vehicles from Atlas Waterfront, River's Edge, Mill River, the Atlas Road, Celtice Way, using it as a bypass to Northwest Boulevard and downtown. So what happens when this 20-foot local road becomes overloaded with traffic? Do we make it wider? Do we raise the speed limit? What about a traffic study? Safety, the new Centennial Trail alignment would force trail users to cross two new busy roads on a grade up to the I-90 underpass. There are currently no road crossings on this portion of the existing trail. A busy road paralleling Riverstone Park would require park users to cross the road to access the relocated trail. Riverstone residents would no longer have direct access to the trail from their homes, condos, or apartments, and would also have to navigate a road crossing and grade to access the new trail. The current trail is 16 feet wide, while the new trail would be much narrower and more dangerous. Loss of enjoyment and property value. The homes in Riviera Walk were marketed as having private access to the trail. The lots adjacent to the trail were very expensive, and the homes were designed with the master bedroom, living room, and patios all facing the quiet trail, not a busy street, with all the negative impacts, noise, exhaust, light pollution that will definitely affect quality of life in the neighborhood. For those residents who cannot continue to live in their homes due to the negative impacts, their property values would undoubtedly be reduced. In closing, we support the trail's mission statement to provide healthier lifestyles by connecting neighborhoods with trails, not by building more roads. Our hope is that the existing Centennial Trail stays where it is, with the road completely eliminated or at least placed below. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to give public comments tonight? Okay. If no one else, we will move on to announcements. Any member of the council have an announcement tonight?
I just have one quick thing. Tomorrow, I will be going to the Association of Idaho Cities convention. I know that some scheduled conflicts didn't allow other council members to go, but if they have a really packed conference agenda, so if you want me to attend some things and come back and share, shoot me an email. I'd be happy to do that. I am going to be attending about 8 of them, but I can fit more in.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else in the council have anything tonight? All right, we will move on to other business. This is the request for a temporary rate increase, changes to the acceptable material list, and modification of a contract in regard to collection procedures for Northern State PAC LLC, doing business as Coeur d'Alene Garbage Service. Troy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for listening. I'd like to also share that City of Coeur d'Alene has spent quality time with both the folks from Kootenai Environmental Alliance on this issue. And I have with us tonight the owner of Coeur d'Alene Garbage, Phil Damiano. So I'd like to set the stage on what we're up to. We included a very comprehensive look at what's going on in the world of recycling. Wall Street Journal articles as recent as May of 2018. Recycling, once embraced by business and environmentalists, now under siege. Prices for scrap paper and plastic have collapsed, leading local officials across the country to change and charge residents more to collect the recyclables. So this is not just a local challenge. Exactly 2 years ago, you were approving a contract with Coeur d'Alene Garbage. It doesn't happen that this would be the anniversary of that piece of work. What we'd like to share with you is an opportunity to open up the contract in conjunction with Kootenai Environmental and our constituents to look for some solutions to this ongoing cost and take a look at some things that have happened. The picture on the screen depicts the bales of cardboard. That's quite a compression process to get the cardboard in those sizes. And so when we talk about a bale of recyclables or a bale of recycling, it's pretty big. We mentioned what it looks like to move the recycling on a belt. This is a belt that would have quote unquote recyclables on it, and some of it is hand-picked. That's what these people are doing. This is what we'd like to clean up and educate our folks, just as you've heard tonight, about clean recyclables have some value. Unclean recyclables are worthless. They're basically garbage, and as you heard, it's very expensive to take and convert that into something that has some money. Give you another picture. Hopefully all of you know what this is. This is the glass recycling depot that the city of Coeur d'Alene entered into to receive the glass from our constituents. There are small holes in that to accept glass bottles. This is not a perfect process either. City of Coeur d'Alene went to work in conjunction with Coeur d'Alene Garbage, acquired a glass crusher. This is in process, and when we crush the glass that comes out of those bins, the City of Coeur d'Alene was not able to use that material as structural fill for our bus stops along Celtice Way, which we had hoped to do. So the one thing we have to do is look at cleaning up our recyclables and educating our folks. And that is part of this proposal. So 2 years ago, Council approved the solid waste services contract with Northern State PAC LLC, doing business as Coeur d'Alene Garbage. Contract was effective July 1st, 2016, and Coeur d'Alene Garbage has fully performed in accordance with the terms and conditions of that contract. This contract provided for the collection of solid waste and single-stream recycling materials and included the glass reuse/recycle program. In May of 18, Coeur d'Alene Garbage requested an increase in compensation for single-stream recycling and a modification in the type of recycling which must be accepted under the contract. Currently, the estimated additional cost to the city, based on the prices that we have for commodities, would be an increase of $17,000 per month. And I know as a council, you're going to want to give us some guidance on how we contract that. So that is the financial analysis. The good news, as has been stated, is that the sanitation fund, which is not a taxpayer-fed fund, it's a utility, which means we charge a fee for the service. There are no property tax dollars that go into that, has performed as a fund very well since this new contract was put in place. We have not done one rate increase in 2 years, even though there are escalators in the contract. It's based on fuel prices and labor prices. It's an index. It's in that multiple page contract we have. And effective July 1, we will see another increase. And even with that increase, we are not proposing a rate increase for our rate payers. It's indisputable that significant changes have occurred in this recycling industry, as you've heard tonight. In late 2017, China, the world's largest consumer of recyclable materials, began to limit the quantity of recycled material that it purchased. And effective January of 2018, they banned 24 types of foreign recyclables, including mixed paper, low-grade plastics, certain metals, and waste textiles. An additional 32 items will be banned beginning later in 2019. The estimated value of these banned materials comes in around $400 million per year. Also in early 2018, which really is changing this industry, is that China mandated that they would not take a contaminated bale of recyclables that had more than 1% contamination. So as an industry, they've had to relook at how they send a bale of recyclables over to China in order to not have it sent back. This has resulted in higher costs. The industry is looking for new solutions, and we as society are not doing a good job of putting only recyclable material in our single stream recycling. So these costs to date have been borne by Coeur d'Alene Garbage as they move those recyclables to their material handler. Right now, the cost to process, as you'd heard, for Coeur d'Alene Garbage is over $100 per ton. That's over $17,000 per month, and that's at about 1,100% increase in cost for recycling in 1 year. This is taking place with other competitors. Waste management that you heard. You heard about the tonnage cost. The cleaner that it is, the less cost to receive, and the more that it can be reused. So if I were able to turn back the clock and look at what is now occurring, going to single stream recycling has not assisted this industry. It's made it easier for us as a consumer. However, we as consumers took the easy route, and we are now putting contamination into the recycling program, which now is costing money. So for details, Council, we are proposing, with your approval, that we would make amendments to the contract, specifically under paragraph 5.3 of the base contract, that speaks to this is the reason why we can do this. No amendments shall be construed to release either party from any obligation of the contract except as specifically provided for in such amendment. All amendments shall be in writing, signed by both parties thereto. In addition, paragraph 5.8 of the base contract requires both parties to, quote, use their best efforts and diligence in mutual good faith to promote the best interests in our city. So we have considered many options. We've gotten information from Coeur d'Alene Garbage. We've done our own research as staff, and we believe that this is in the best interest of the city to continue a vigorous recycling program, look to clean up the recycling, and enter into this interim agreement with these amendments. So we would propose amendments to paragraph 4.3 of the base contract and look to assist in this cost for this incredible increase in our recyclable materials. We also are proposing and had been working with Kootenai Environmental Alliance to make modifications to the recycling bins that are not putting acceptable recyclables into them. In other words, we would tag them and give them a day to acknowledge the fact that they've been tagged. Should they want it picked up as garbage, we have a return trip fee that's already on your fee list. and educate these folks. The card would say, whatever is in there is unacceptable. There's a website you can go to. You can call Coeur d'Alene Garbage. You could access this information and whatever the best fashion is to help educate our constituents on the use of that. In addition, due to the volatility, we would recommend as staff that we add a definition to recyclable materials in paragraph 1 of Schedule B, and that the list of recyclable materials be subject to change with the consent of the city based on market conditions. I bring that up because I don't know what the future of recycling is. It would be great if there's more outlets that could take plastic bags would be a really good one. Right now, if you have a plastic bag, the city of Coeur d'Alene uses those to pick up doggy doo for constituents that are in our parks at no cost. So we are doing our best to come up with creative solutions for some of these materials. So I have Phil with me. I would entertain any questions you might have as we bring this forward.
Questions for Troy at this time? What?
So the concern isn't so much the money at this point. You're saying we can afford to pick up the $17,000 a month, which is like $1 a house, right?
You are correct. Yep, it works out very close to that. The sanitation fund is about a $4 million a year gross revenue, and thanks to the contract that we wrote 2 years ago, we have savings enough to cover that expense. We're also paying out of that fund to cover the glass that we're picking up and having crushed. That's an additional cost, as we talked about when that was approved a couple years ago. And we still do not have an outstanding recycling program for glass. It's a reuse program as inert fill material.
So let me ask you, is there such a thing as a good recycling program? Are there cities that have figured out how to not contaminate things, or is it just a feel-good thing?
It's education and not allowing contamination to be in those carts and helping those people that are making that error and throwing that unrecyclable material into their blue bin.
So the education's a big part of this.
Gigantic, and the policing thereof to make sure that when that cart is tipped, everything in it is recyclable and clean.
So we have recyclable police coming, recycling police.
There are many communities that take it to that level.
Really?
And, thanks to the hauler and the driver, that would be our best eyes on the street.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions for Troy? Amy?
Troy, do they currently tag recyclable bins if they see inappropriate material in there?
They do. They've been very accommodating. In other words, they're tipping most every bin. The number of tags that they have put on those bins has not been very significant. However, that's why we're in front of you again to say that this is going to be a little bit of pain before we have the gain for those that aren't keeping up with what this industry has done. So yes, we have a few, and that's where we're getting tires and some things that are really, really obvious, electronics, tree branches.
So a few tags, not a significant amount. So
Right.
Can you make an assumption that most people are following proper protocol in recycling?
I
If
cannot
there's been very
make
few
that.
tags?
After visiting the facility where this glass crusher is, which is where the trucks come that have the recyclables in it, when it's spread on the floor before it's baled, it is not much different than garbage. Propane tanks, as you heard, hoses, you see a number of pizza boxes. Some people, and especially those that know about this, are doing a phenomenal job, but it's not across the community.
I guess where I'm going with this is I would think that tagging inappropriate items or the box would help be an important piece of education to those citizens. You know, many people even up here, when you said, or earlier was said, pizza boxes. I know a lot of people think you can recycle those pizza boxes because they're not very greasy and they're cardboard. So it makes logical sense that they should be able to go in. I think that tagging is a really important piece of education for our citizens, so.
I totally agree. It's education. It's also the fact that there's stickers on the bins. Not all of those are being recycled, so do we spend, we could easily spend $18,000 putting stickers on all of those bins. So this industry is in a great state of flux, and it is partly with our constituents on how to educate them and understand that if you don't think it's recyclable, it's probably not recyclable, like a pizza box now. My other favorite one is yogurt's pretty good for you, and it is not good for recycling because if you put a yogurt cup in there and it's not thoroughly cleaned out, it grows really well. That's contamination, and it's not good for anything. So we're in that state where we'd like to feel that it should be recyclable, and we may put it in that blue bin. And right now, because of this industry, it's contamination and takes the value from maybe something to nothing.
I have a couple more questions.
Go ahead, Amy.
In the contract on page 36 under 3.10, disclosure of operations information and reports. Records shall be kept on all complaints and resolution thereof, and copies of said complaints and resolutions shall be provided to the city's recycling coordinator on a monthly basis. Do we have that data available to us of complaints and resolution provided to us monthly?
Do we have it available? Yes, we can get it. I guess I would be your recycling coordinator today as well. And so we've looked into the complaints. I almost handle those directly when they come into the city, so we work with Coeur d'Alene Garbage on that and have that. We also have, that's why the tags that are going on the recycle bins, we've looked into that, and Coeur d'Alene Garbage has been very, very conservative in issuing any of those.
Okay. And one more question for right now. On the $17,000 a month coming out potentially from the utility fund, what else could those funds be used for if they weren't going to be spent on this?
Our plan is to bring forward a improvement plan for our alleys. Because right now we don't maintain our alleys in any great way, shape, or form. And since the sanitation fund primarily uses the alleys for access in those parts of town that have alleys, we were looking at a proposal there. Otherwise, we were looking to, again, partner any chance we could on the education, so the dollars would be used for education. You see a glass crusher, that's part of the contract. Anything we could partner with industry on the reuse of glass. And then the other piece would be offsetting future increases to those constituent fees going forward, because the contract will continue to increase in cost based on fuel and labor costs. So we are offsetting future increases by saving the money on the front end of this contract. It's a 10-year contract with 2 3-year options for a total of 16 maximum.
Troy, your plan is to still move ahead with the alley improvement program.
It is,
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
We're looking at one-time monies there to help offset some of the equipment costs.
Okay. Dan English.
Well, I would just comment that I don't think, well, I have not seen much effort on the education front, just being, going about regular business, being a regular person, and, I learned a few things tonight, so I guess I'm hopeful that if we really put some effort into educating people that we could see quite a difference. I do think that it's pretty clear, and when we had these hearings before, people want to have recycling. They're also willing to pay something to have that, and maybe pay a little bit more, but I think we need to be really clear that, we shouldn't end up having to pay more than we really need to just because people aren't tuned in. And I think so again, with the education, I think that's something where we really need to emphasize, and we can see some improvement. The other thing is, how do we define temporary in this?
That's good contract language. That's why I have a number of good attorneys to work on that. We were looking at like a quarterly update on what the commodity market is doing, working with Coeur d'Alene Garbage. I would propose that we can get back to you in a year. That's good input on what it is we're looking at. So we had that in mind as well. Coeur d'Alene Garbage would like to get out of that price increase that continues and is willing to partner on the education, just to share that with you as we've been speaking to it. I need to reiterate that for $10.50 a month, you can have our biggest container, which is a 96-gallon container. They come every week, pick it up, and every other week they come and pick up your 64-gallon blue bin. The price hasn't changed in years now, so we have a great service at a reasonable price with an industry that's totally changed.
Dan,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Troy, you said we have savings in the sanitation fund. How long, or how much do we have, and how long does that last?
Depends on recycling, should you go forward with this cost basis, and what you'd like to do with the proposal coming forward to clean up the alleys. Our goal is to get that fund back healthy, and so the increase this year, July 1st, to Coeur d'Alene garbage will be the maximum 2.75%.
Ouch. So they're asking for 275.
No, they're actually have earned it based on the contract per prices of gas and labor.
Okay.
And if it didn't have the cap of 2.75, it would have been closer to 4%.
So how much money is in the fund?
I have approximately, today I probably have about $1 million in the fund.
Okay. And you're talking about alleys for that, but also $17K a month to help offset the cost of the recycling? And there's going to be a time limit on that. I assume that we're going to just approve this for a given period of time, not eternally.
Yeah, we would propose to have that in the contract amendment language so that we can come and take a look at it. And then the education piece would be an expense out of the sanitation fund as well.
Yeah, that the PR campaign, I mean, for those cards, that's going to be a big deal because people are not going to be happy to see those, and they're not going to be happy with the cost to come back and pick it up as trash. And so, you know, we don't like unhappy people. So I'm hoping that we can work well to educate people on what to do.
Kiki.
I got almost all my questions answered already. This education piece is the big, to me, kind of a missing link. I think that for me, there was really no market for glass when we started talking about glass, and there's still no market for glass, and the thoughts that we had to utilize the glass for didn't work out. But is part of the education plan to still educate people on how to clean and prep and deposit their glass?
It would be, yes.
And that's in the hopes that someday there'll be a market for glass, and then people are, if the market comes back, then people are educated on how to process that.
We as a city have a hope to use that glass in, I'll just give you the specific project, 15th Street. We would love to be able to use it as a structural fill material.
But it wasn't acceptable at Saltese because of compaction, or what was the issue there?
Because of the biodegradable that had been thrown in with the glass.
So we have to have cleaner glass,
We
which
have
is
to have
part of the
cleaner, thank you.
in order to make it work. So that is a more costly education process for just that one aspect. And the process right now is most of the glass is going to the landfill, regardless of how it's deposited.
The glass that the city is receiving at the glass bins is actually being processed and used as inert fill material, not at your landfill.
Okay. So my thoughts basically are the education is a much larger piece that hasn't been very successful in the past, and so that should probably have a lot more allotted to it. And who would do that? And would it be the partner, Coeur d'Alene Garbage and KEA, with the city to create that educational component?
We have proposed that to KEA, and they are taking that up at their board meeting this month.
So that's still in discussion. And the other thing I think I have a real concern with is this time frame to review all of this is too long. If there's going to be amendment to a contract that lasts a year, I feel like that the review period of that could and should probably be even monthly. If this market is that volatile, where this occurred in January and we're reviewing this in June, if you want to go quarterly, I can see that might happen, but if you go quarterly and then you're a year out on a contract, it seems like it could be about a year and a half. And so having us, the city, take that flat fee of a subsidy without some negotiated percentage with the contractor and putting the amendment in for that long of a period of time seems like that needs to have the pencil sharpened a little bit.
I like that idea a lot. So what we want to do is get in front of you, share the experience, look at what the cost is, and again, it's a commodity, so it moves at least monthly or can move monthly. So our proposal was to come back with a formula that would start to look at the hauler is responsible for hauling it. That cost was already theirs. They have something in that process. We would look to have a high end, because what if it went to, I don't know, $200 a ton to process this material? Well, we don't have an endless supply of revenue to pay for that, so we'd like to put a stopgap in there as well that says if it's above this, we have to come back and figure it out.
Which also has to be part of the education component, because our citizens need to know that that isn't just us with the ability to control the world market. So unless one of you guys can.
Oh, that's urban renewal does
Oh,
that.
okay. Okay, well, that's really my concern. I feel like the education piece needs much larger focus, and it has to include the consequences of what we're asking them to do if it doesn't work that way. And then if you're willing to, discuss those percentages and the shortening of the review of that contract, I think that's important.
Any other questions? Amy?
So part of what's before us tonight is a reduction in acceptable recyclables, correct?
Correct.
And this is because China is banning 24 currently, and they're projected to ban 32 more items. Okay. Is there other options other than China available? Has the provider and the city explored every other option to recycle these items?
That's a really broad question. We count on these types of entities that handle this in finding ways in which to, make money from handling those items. So I'm 2 years into glass as your administrator, and I don't have a better solution than I did 2 years ago. So I would like to say no, but I don't have any follow-up or any business or any creative ideas other than educating to clean it up and hoping that the markets where they are totally involved in this will come up with some reuses so that we could continue to add back product. Without it penciling, we're just paying a lot of money to landfill a lot of this material in a different state.
And I understand that. I just want to make sure that we've explored all options available to the citizens who are passionate about recycling. And I'm not aware of all those options, so I'm turning to possibly Coeur d'Alene Garbage, yourself, to KEA to help educate us on all the options available.
We've met with KEA, and you've heard some of the creative ones on some of the reuses. Obviously, trucking costs play into where that material goes. We've offered up glass to a number of different entities saying, how much? We'll deliver it, no cost. What can you think of? And talked about a couple of projects that we could possibly control. So appreciate your inputs.
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
And my last question, I hope, for the night on this is there an industry norm for cities to absorb this burden? Is this standard across the United States for when costs rise for cities to take on that burden versus the provider?
Many of the cities have been passing it on to the person paying the fees, is what I've seen as the norm. The haulers are definitely coming in to either open up their contracts like this or show them the contract. They couldn't have anticipated these types of increases. Probably you'll see contracts written in the future that if these commodity prices move like this, that there's a share in it, because it's really never been done this way before when they thought they had a really good deal getting rid of this product. So I would say that, yes, this has gotten to be commonplace with contracted haulers not being able to absorb these kinds of cost increases.
Woody?
I was thinking along the same things, Ames. You know, worst case scenario or best case scenario, everybody pays another $1. That saves you $204,000 a year, and hopefully it gets better. But worst case scenario is it costs us $1 a month more to eat $17,000, right? I mean, we're trying not to do that now, to give the opportunity to do the education. And KEA a step up, maybe 2030 has got their foot in it, and you know, we got all these educated people around here. Let's see what they can do.
Kiki, Jen.
I just wanted to, what we're asked to do tonight is to recommend that staff moves forward with the negotiations. Is the final contract or options for the contract going to come back to us, or are you going to negotiate and make those amendments? How will that work?
It will come back to you.
Within, as fast as you can get it done, or?
As fast as we can get it done.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dan?
Well, I would just make a comment. Did you say the monthly service for the large can is about how much a month?
$10.50.
And I would just say for some period of time, we lived out in Twin Lakes and didn't have access to that, and you take it every Saturday, load up the pickup and go to the bins and all of that, and you know, just say that that's still a pretty good bargain for the convenience we probably take for granted, but if you ever have to haul your own, you can appreciate that. So.
Any other questions?
Oh, Ron?
Ron?
Yeah, Troy, now, this contract's been in effect for what, 2 years?
Correct.
Okay, can we not expect any other rate increase in this contract for a number of years?
The contract was written in such a manner that the only increase that was knowledgeable to us when we wrote it was the fuel and the labor annual increase based on formulas and indexes, same thing that we had in the previous contract. So that one is a built-in increase. Otherwise, I was hoping not to ever come back to you on this contract for any expenses or any changes that way. So this industry has changed so much that I don't know what to say on your question other than I would hope not.
Okay.
Anything else? Now, I know that Phil is here. I don't know if council would like more information or if they have enough information to move forward on it. I think Phil is here. He could speak if anyone had any questions directly for him, or if you guys are ready for a decision, we can move into that. So your choice. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to at least have the staff move forward and do these negotiations with Northern State PAC and Coeur d'Alene Garbage Service.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion?
Can we add into this motion or make at least a strong recommendation that some options for not eliminating those recyclables come back? Maybe there is no options. Again, I don't know, but can we have that presented at the same time?
What do you mean, for example, what? I mean, what is it? What would
Is
be an
there a
option?
facility that does accept those not in China?
So you want to see
Is there any other options?
The current recycler that's being used, which is in Tacoma, but you want to explore other options like using the MRF, whatever else there could be out there that we wouldn't know.
Correct. Using the MRF, they mentioned a place, a constituent mentioned a place in South Carolina that recycled for graduation gowns.
So Amy, you just want more information to have Troy explore.
Yes.
Explore all the possible options and then include them in the contract that you bring back, and that's really what you're asking us
Yes.
for, just more homework on
Just
that.
more information on that, please.
Yeah. Any other discussion? I do want to thank Troy. Troy has spent an enormous amount of time working and meeting with a lot of people to get to this point, so I'm sure that between now and the time that he gets Mike Gridley to write the contract, that there'll be a lot more work on that for doing that. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Troy. Now we're going to move on to the eligibility report proposal for the health corridor in East Sherman. I'm going to recuse myself from that because I have property in those areas and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to discuss those. So I'm going to turn that over to Council President McEvers.
Well, Hillary, you've come a long way, and welcome.
Well, thank you, and good evening, Council. I am here to ask for your support in helping us move forward eligibility reports for the East Sherman planning area and also for the health corridor to determine if the two areas would be eligible as future urban renewal districts. So give you a little history as I kind of show you the maps here. So this first area talking about is the East Sherman Avenue master planning area. And so this area has been a priority project for the planning department as well as the community at large. This is one of the spotlight action items in the CDA 2030 Vision Project. And specifically it says to develop and implement a master plan for redevelopment of the East Sherman Avenue neighborhood, incorporating an inviting gateway-style entrance to the city. And so we started working very hard in 2015. We're partnering with CDA 2030 on the effort to kind of engage community members, figure out what do they want to see for East Sherman. And so we've been very busy doing that, received a lot of great feedback from our community members. And so we also received technical assistance from community builders, and we'll be finishing up the master plan in 2018. And then moving forward with updating the zoning code to align the zoning code with the types of uses that people would like to see on East Sherman and coming up with some incentives for that. So what's going to happen after the master plan and the zoning code is done is we're going to hopefully start to see some of those short-term, mid-term, and long-term improvements along the corridor. And so one of the things we've been hearing from community members from the beginning of this effort in 2015, and I believe it even was last time around in 2008, 2009, when the community was working on East Sherman, was urban renewal is probably our best tool for seeing this area get revitalized. And so now we're at a point where we want to say, is this the right tool for us or not to move forward with revitalization efforts? And so the thought is to look at this area shown on the map here. So starting at 9th Street and then continuing east to past Coeur d'Alene Lake Drive and encompassing the properties that are abutting I-90, and then coming down toward the Floating Green Drive, wrapping 23rd Street, encompassing our cemetery here, and then Front Avenue on the south and Lakeside Avenue on the north with a few other properties here. This area is approximately 106 acres. So that helps kind of give a perspective for the size of that. Several commercial property owners in the East Sherman area have indicated that they're kind of waiting to do anything with revitalizing their properties until they see what the master plan says, once that gets adopted, once the zoning code has been amended, and then also to determine, is city going to do anything with urban renewal? Are there going to be other funding mechanisms in place? Are we looking at a local improvement district, the business improvement district, grant funding? What else is available? And that's also true of several investors. We have some entrepreneurs and investors that are actively looking at East Sherman and waiting until we've taken this next step. And so we are hopeful that this is a step we can take on determining eligibility. The next area is this health corridor. And so this is something that Kootenai Health approached CDA 2030 in 2017 and asked if they could have assistance in kind of looking at the area. They've been doing a lot of the efforts themselves over the years and have been successful with that. But they thought, you know, kind of moving forward, they need to figure out what's their future vision. And so they asked for CDA 2030 to help bring in the Urban Land Institute to look at the area and do a technical advisory panel to determine, you know, what's going on, what are the issues there, and come up with some recommendations. And so they did produce a report, and that's here, and there's several recommendations. And there's also several models that can be used to kind of implement the recommendations, and one of those is urban renewal. And that one ends up having the most pros and the least number of cons. And so Kootenai Health was interested in exploring this as a possible urban renewal district. And so that was something that was important to them. They've asked the city and some other community partners if we could help assist in the funding of just this eligibility report. And this area is approximately 281 acres, and it is a large area. The one thing to note with the eligibility reports is this is the first step in the process of determining, is an area, does it even qualify as urban renewal? Do we even want to create a district? So you take that step first, and then you can always tool it back and say, hey, it should be a much smaller area. Let's shrink that down. And then the next step would be council would adopt an eligibility report by resolution and direct Ignite to move forward on an urban renewal plan, just like has been done for Atlas. So last year in May, council did adopt the eligibility report for Atlas last May, and then directed Ignite to move forward with the urban renewal plan, which includes the master planning effort and the economic feasibility. So at that time is when you figure out the specific boundaries, what does your plan include, all the specificity that's required, the level of details that you're starting to see emerge for the Atlas waterfront. So financial analysis.
Let me kind of hold you here. We're streaming through this. Let's go back to Sherman if we could. You guys got any questions on Sherman?
Tons, but I was going to wait till she's done.
Oh, okay. I'm getting lost in this. Any other questions on Sherman? I would like to know, we have a master plan. When's that due?
We're working on it this year. It'll be done in 2018. So it's probably going to be over the next couple months. We are working closely with CDA 2030 and community builders to take all the information that's been developed and gathered to date, wrap that up, create a master plan, bring it to you for adoption. And in conjunction with that, we're working on looking at what changes need to happen to the zoning code to implement that master plan for East Sherman. So that'll also come back to council.
So do you think a master plan would come here and we wouldn't tear it apart and change things? You say you bring it to us for adoption. You think that's not good enough for me, just my experience with this kind of master planning. I don't know about these guys, but it just seems like we try and be involved in things as it starts to go, but we don't have the end sight, right? The end product, where I think sometimes you can see that. I thought we were drawing pretty pictures and having fun with the streets and all these things, but I'm not seeing how an urban renewal district could, what could it do? Again, my experience with urban renewal is dirt.
Right.
County dirt with nothing, so there's nothing to start with. I wonder, do you see how that would work?
So some of the improvements and the ideas that have been emerging have been looking at Sherman corridor and potentially expanding the sidewalks on the north side of the street and adding some areas for stormwater. So you could do some street trees and have some silva cells, which is the structural material that goes below the sidewalks that allows for the stormwater to filtrate through that. So those are some of the ideas. We're looking at a stormwater project in the street itself that'll help offset the requirements for development projects. Right now, you have to do your on-site stormwater detention, and this is something that could help offset that, allowing these properties to be more developable. So those are some of the improvements. Some other things that we're looking at, there's some possible upgrades required to sewer infrastructure, some traffic. We talked about maybe should there be a traffic circle or a roundabout here as kind of a gateway feature. There's opportunities to purchase some of the blighted properties and assist with some either redevelopment or acquiring land for parking lots to help meet the parking demands, because we're starting to see some parking issues on East Sherman. And again, the properties are very small, so we're going to need to look at ways to help incentivize development opportunities. So those are some of the areas where urban renewal could be very beneficial. It may not be, it's not going to be huge costs like we're going to see in Atlas or we saw in Riverstone, but it still could be a very beneficial tool for the community to kind of look at that. Some other things would be pedestrian level streetlights. So similar to the ones downtown, East Sherman has none of that, and we've been trying to create a walkable destination. There's not enough lighting along East Sherman. So those types of features that are within the public right-of-way could be beneficial as ways to fund it with urban renewal.
Continue with what you're saying, because this is the first time I've heard this. I mean, seeing this thing on the agenda on Thursday was like, it was like a real big jump start. Normally, and with the Atlas project as an example, we have lots of meetings, we have lots of public meetings, there's lots of transparency, there's lots of communications with the public. The items you just listed off, Hillary, I mean, this is this is stuff council needs to know before we jump the gun and form urban renewal. And if I can just look back to our meeting that we had last month with strategic planning, we had discussed this, it came up. And so you mentioned it in your staff report, you talked about the East Sherman master plan and that was coming. And then when we went on our roundtable, the mayor mentioned that council should probably have a discussion of priorities for urban renewal districts and whether the council would look further into a health district. And we haven't done that, but all of a sudden we have an agenda item tonight that's, let's do a report, let's move forward. But yet we have not discussed our priorities, and we have not even had a meeting where we could discuss what's necessary in a health district. I don't know, I mean, I don't go to the 2030 meetings, and I haven't been part of the group that's been studying a health district. Even Council Member Evans asked whether the eligibility study of the health district was completed, and you said it had not started yet. And then Council Member Evans also said, let's explore some low-hanging fruit out there on East Sherman, and I don't think we've done that yet either. So I would just like to see a lot more transparency in this process, because, you know, my experience with government is that when we do eligibility reports, they always come out thumbs up, let's go forward. So I really would like to see more stuff presented to us and a chance to digest everything that's going on, like you just said, in a public forum, so that we can truly evaluate this right now. And I know that, you know, people will probably say, well, the eligibility report's going to have most of that stuff in there for you. But per Idaho code, there's nothing about an eligibility report for creating an urban renewal district. That's an LCDC thing. That's what they do. And there's been examples of them creating a district without an eligibility report. The code is actually kind of, you know, you said that the first step is an eligibility report, and then we adopt it to move forward. Well, according to Idaho Code 502905, the first step is the Urban Renewal Agency comes up with a report. That would be the first step. But I'm not opposed to discussing all the opportunities that we would have for doing these. I know the hospital, I mean, there's obviously never been any master plan there. Susie said that herself. It kind of happened. East Sherman, in the 2030 plan, it talks about East Sherman and what we can do to make it a gateway of the city, and I think all of council is supportive of that. It's the only time that urban renewal is mentioned in the 2030 plan is specifically with East Sherman, and it's mentioned as one of like 4 different methods that we can do to create that gateway. So there's that, there's a BID, there's an LID, there was some other method of creating that gateway. So from where I'm sitting, and I don't know where the rest of council feels, I would just like to see more information before we move forward with urban renewal as the designated solution. And you probably still have more staff report to give, so, but Woody interrupted you and I took advantage.
That's okay.
Well, it's just, I'm kind of coming from where he is. I remember in the 80s when we did downtown and the bulbs out and the trees and the bricks that have held up so well, that we do them every about 7 years, that East Sherman didn't want to have anything to do with it. So we went up to 7th Street. And East Sherman, in those days, you went to the property owners. They're the ones that have the risk, not the community feel-good, scrub-a-dub, make the lines brighter and all the feel-good things. And I love all the feel-good things, but has it changed to where it's not the property owners anymore? It's whoever wants to contribute to their ideas of what it should be. I mean, that's okay if that's okay with the property owners, because they basically carry the grunt or the brunt of whatever happens through LIDs or anything. It's their money, not our money.
Are you saying, so the property owners have been involved in the ideas, so is that what you're questioning?
I think that's so important.
Yes.
Yeah, they want the fancy bulb outs and the streets slowed down and the lighting and all that and the walkabouts. That's what they want.
We've been hearing that, but that's through the master planning. So the eligibility report is truly just to say, is this area blighted, or does it have economic development potential? Are there traffic inefficiencies? Does it meet all these criteria? The next step, if we were to follow this, what I'm requesting, would be then, okay, now you can dive more into economic feasibility and master planning. We've already started on the master planning for East Sherman. The health corridor has not done that level of master planning. And so that's that's the path I was proposing, but we certainly can.
Can we wait until the master plans are done before we discuss urban renewal?
Well, for East Sherman, we can certainly do that. It just delays the process, so the eligibility
What's the rush?
reports.
This economy's on fire. It's the hottest economy of the 21st century. Why do we need government money for these guys to build their projects?
Well, a lot of it's just to see that we're making some progress moving forward with the project. So because the timing of creating the districts, as you know, Atlas has taken a long time to get to this point. So we started a year ago, and it won't be created until the end of this year, that district. So it's not a quick process. And so this is just to kind of keep the ball moving forward to show that we are committed to East Sherman and making progress. For the health corridor, for them, I think they want to know, is this even eligible before they put money into a master plan?
Technically, you talk about eligibility, and this is a beef. I don't have it with you, Hillary. I have it with the Urban Renewal Agency. This council determined in 1997, when they created the Urban Renewal Agency, that there were areas of blight in the city, and that's what spawned the Urban Renewal Agency. So the whole city qualifies, and it's a thing I have with them. It's nothing with you. It's just the eligibility report. That's just my deal. You probably want to say something.
Right, yeah. You guys have some input on, sorry, we all kind of went all sideways here.
So one thing I guess I can point out, unless you had a question before I.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So if we were to move forward with eligibility reports, if council supported that, one thing that would be done at the same time is that the consultant would make sure that this is not going to impact the city as a whole. We'd have to stay under our 10%. So there's still that requirement that the current city valuation limit has to stay under 10% per Idaho code. And so they would make sure, if we're looking at these boundaries and all of it is way too much, that would be something that, hey, this is a deal breaker. Because the critical ones, council's already said Atlas is the #1 priority. So that's not going to be impacted by any other potential future districts. But by having them evaluate these areas, they could recommend shrinking any of them and then also giving us the full perspective to say, okay, at large, the city has to stay under 10%, and here's your risk of going over that. Currently, the city's at 5% with the existing Lake and River District and including the future Atlas District. So we're looking good right now. So that's kind of how this process works. I think we already kind of talked about why would we do this now. We talked about kind of the time frame of that. Eligibility report, I know Councilman Gookin doesn't like the name, but those are valid for, it's a shelf life of 2 to 3 years. And so we could, even if we decide, hey, we want to wait until something else happens, until Lake District closes or something, for example, it would still be valid. The timing seems good right now just to move forward on this step. And I understand that council wants more input and feedback on all the great things that have come out of the East Sherman Master Planning and would like to see more ideas emerge for the health corridor.
Yeah, to meet that end, I'd like to make a motion. I don't know where this is going to go.
Let me
go ahead.
finish these guys getting some input.
Oh,
This
sure.
is
I
East
didn't know other
Sherman.
people wanted to talk.
Just hold on.
Hillary,
Well, we didn't ask. But
I
Barreled over 'em.
That's what I do.
would like to ask you to expand on the thoughts behind Community Builders, who is they're working on East Sherman, and some of the funding mechanisms they're recommending to the city. Can you give some more information on that?
So they're still helping us kind of develop that list, but from the beginning, they've said urban renewal is our best tool for what we're trying to achieve. But they recommend that to be done in conjunction with the local improvement district and a business improvement district to make sure that the property owners have some skin in the game, they're helping contribute, and that there's some kind of BID formed for kind of the ongoing maintenance, which is true of the Downtown Association. It works really well to have that kind of mechanism. But we're looking at, are there grants out there? Are there maybe some Tiger grants? The federal grants, they're very hard to qualify for and to receive, but there are grants like that. And then, of course, there's kind of the smaller ones, like community choices and some smaller grants available at the state level. But in Idaho, we're very limited on what are the tools that are available for economic development, and this is one of them. They've also asked, are there ways to do any kind of tax abatement? Washington State can do that for certain, like Kendall Yards project, for example, there's tax abatements. And so they're proposing a bunch of different ideas they've seen in other states and communities, but yeah, those are kind of the preliminary funding ideas that we've heard so far, but we are going to continue to look at those and pursue other opportunities.
And can you give us a little bit more information on these feasibility studies? Would they potentially be done by the same agency and at the same time? Is there
So-
cost savings there to do them?
There would be some cost savings. So we've, CDA 2030 was asked to contact some different consulting firms and agencies that do this kind of effort, just to get ballpark figures for the Kootenai Health, for the Health Corridor one. And so there's a range of prices on that. So kind of the highest one, out-of-state consulting firm, I think maximum would be $15,000 for the Health Corridor area. And so divided by 4, that's how they came up with the $3,750. If that same firm, or say we used a different firm out of state, if they came and did both studies, then we'd save on travel. Some of the background information is the same, so there would be cost savings with that.
You good, Ames?
Yeah, thank you.
So Hillary, I kind of get the sense that this is almost a housekeeping item. I feel like there's these grants that were received, the TAP grant and the Community Builder grant, and all this community process happened. And now the community's kind of waiting for what are our options for funding. And so you're moving forward with this report to try to put that ball in play. So it's just a report to find out eligibility, but it's not actually a consideration. And so I guess what I'm wrestling with is the timing of doing this right now. If there's an impetus to do this right now, and it's a housekeeping item that gives the information to the potential investors and gives the information to the people who are continuing to move forward with the possibilities in these 2 areas, it's not a huge amount of money. It's more of a housekeeping issue in my mind. So if I'm off base there, let me know. And then the community outreach piece, it feels like a lot of it, by these grant-funded entities, is driven by their processes. So once this was done, this report really would go back to the Urban Renewal Agency and be totally in their hands for the formation of a district plan.
Right, if council supported that. But yes, you're right, this is more just, we're just gonna see, are these areas even, do they even qualify? Should we even be talking about urban renewal? If not, then that's off the table and we need to pursue other funding opportunities for both areas. So that's exactly right. So this doesn't commit the council to move forward or Ignite to move forward creating districts. This is truly just.
And the reality is you may find out that one may be eligible and one may not be.
Correct.
But then you have that tool to either put into the conversation that Ignite may pick up or not. They might say it's too much for what we're doing, or we don't feel the citizens want that, or the council isn't going to approve it. So it becomes a tool that's not in the product plan in the future anyway. So that's kind of the sense I'm getting, and I'm thinking that it's more of not what are we going to do with it, it's is this a tool that's even part of the conversation? East Sherman could organically develop on its own based on information that's already been gathered, and wouldn't that be lovely? But if there was some, one block area and 4 years down the road, there is a possibility for a district to be created, this would be the document that says it's eligible for it. Is that?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
And you're right, the amounts are not that much. So I have money in my professional services budget right now, and so the East Sherman, the maximum amount we're looking at would be $10,000, and then if we did help pay for a portion of the health corridor, it'd be that $3,750.
Kiki, this is just, it's not necessary. The entire city was declared eligible for urban renewal in 1997. What you're hearing now is propaganda from LCDC that wants the city to pay for a report that they would otherwise do. And I think they're gun shy here because they want us to pre-approve an urban renewal district. I ran this by city legal because I did not think it was legal. It's actually not in the statutes. There is no text in the statute called eligibility report. It does not exist. There is Idaho statutes which allow an urban renewal agency to prepare a plan for an urban renewal district. We can petition them, as anyone can petition them, to create a new district. But they're the ones who pay for a study. They're the ones who do the study. They do all this stuff. And like Atlas, did we do an eligibility study? Did we pay for one for Atlas? No, we did not, because it's not in the code. So I think this is just, it's wrong. And it's not only that, it is completely non-transparent. We're talking about districts that could last up to 21 years and take property tax off areas that are already developed in an economy that is red hot for people who are holding off development because they want the public money to make their projects more lucrative. And I want to see something done on East Sherman. I do. And I want to see something done in the hospital. I drive up the hospital district all the time. And so I know Dan does too. And the traffic, it stinks. There could be better stuff done up there. I just think we're jumping the gun right now because we're being manipulated to say, yeah, let's do urban renewal. Let's get all excited about this. And we have not done what we said in strategic planning, which is to explore the master plan. I would entertain that we wait until those master plans are done, and then we look at the options as cited in the 2030 plan, which was urban renewal was one, BID was another, LID was another. There was a fourth, and I forget what the fourth was, but these are all options that we have available to us, tools that we have to go ahead and complete this vision. I just think we're jumping the gun prematurely, because once we do an eligibility report, by God, it's going to come back positive, and it's going to say go for it. And it's not necessary. I don't think we need to spend the money on it. I think what we need to do is discuss the master plan and then discuss what it is exactly we want to accomplish. And then we, as the decision makers, can determine at that point, is urban renewal the answer? That's the way I would prefer to go.
So,
Danny,
Councilmember
I'd like to-
McEvers,
Yes, sir.
can I weigh in on this? Because there is nothing in Idaho code that prevents the city from deciding to fund eligibility report. Just like there's nothing that prevents you from funding a garbage report or a recycling report or anything else. So it's totally legal. I want to make clear that there was.
I'm sorry if I misstated myself.
I think it was a little bit.
Good, thank you.
It is clear and legal that you can fund an eligibility report. The eligibility report would be required, that's background information, for a plan to ever be proposed and brought to you for approval. So that's the background information that will be gathered, that will then be used as part of a plan that would then come forward, if is proposed by the Urban Renewal Agency, for your consideration and approval. So I guess I'm following up with Councilmember Miller's comments that this is more of a background, more of a preliminary step that really needs to be done if there is any support for going forward and looking at these districts. So I just wanted to correct that.
And, well, you're on the mic. The comment that the entire city was deemed eligible in 1997, can you, if that's the case, then there would never need to be an eligibility report for anyone, anywhere, any district. Is that?
Well, I think the eligibility report goes much deeper than that, and certainly, so that, what's that, 20 years ago? The size of Coeur d'Alene was a different size, different makeup. As somebody pointed out, maybe they look at it today and say, you know, it really doesn't qualify, this district or this area doesn't qualify under the definitions of blight or for appropriate for urban renewal. I don't know. But I think, like any report, it becomes stale or dated over time. In 20 years, in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, I'd suggest things have changed quite a bit.
Just a lot less dirt around. So that clears up a couple of things. I guess I'm still looking at the timing of it and trying to determine. I do want to follow up on your point. I don't feel like I'm being manipulated, but I do wonder about the cost being borne by the city versus being borne by the Urban Renewal Agency. So
I think these ones are a little different than the Atlas one. So Ignite did fund.
That's a whole feasibility study and plan.
But it did, and there was, the eligibility report was done in advance. So that was adopted by council by resolution last May. Yeah, and I don't know if anyone really remembers that effort that was done, but PAC did that. So Panhandle Area Council did that. So the Idaho code related to the urban renewal doesn't preclude anyone from being a proponent. So you can have proponents, and that's how I think Ignite was looking at it for East Sherman and for this health corridor, that the city and CDA 2030 have been working really hard on East Sherman, and so we're kind of already underway, and so we're perceived as we're the project proponent for that. So it makes a lot of sense for us to take this step for this one. For Kootenai Health, they're kind of the lead in saying, hey, we want to look at this, and so they're willing to offer up funding for that, and They're asking for some additional support just to show we're on board, we support your efforts. And so I think the thought would be the eligibility reports would be paid for under this manner, and then Ignite would be asked to fund, if council wants to move forward with the next step, which would be the urban renewal plans, then that would be Ignite that would largely fund those. It's my understanding.
Okay. The old guy.
Sure. With all due respect to one of my seatmates, the other Dan, I guess, you know, I would just say I'm still a fairly new Urban Renewal Board member, but I actually am on the Ignite board and have been there in meetings, and it just seems like you are ascribing all kinds of motives, behaviors, all kinds of things that at least I as a board member don't see that, don't feel that, and I see this as a pretty, like Kiki says, pretty routine kind of thing. Everything that's, people want to have information. We want to know what the options are. And it looks like, okay, here's the logical process to go through and determine what some of the answers to some of these questions, get it back, wrestle around with it. It seems very transparent to me, and it's not like this is the thing tonight where we're voting to say, oh yeah, we're going to make 2 new urban renewal districts there. So I guess I'm
Will you give me $100
I'm
if
seeing
they
a
don't?
disproportionate response from my point of view to what that, you know, to what's there. But also, you know, we are doing a lot of partnering with the urban renewal, and we have a meeting tomorrow, and I don't have the agenda memorized, but I think there's an item on there talking about like the grandstand remodel and down at the Four Corners, and I mean, there's a lot of money that they have spent for things that benefit the city, and actually it's all the people together benefiting. But so I guess anyway, my 2 cents is this makes sense to me as just the next logical step to find out what some of the questions are.
James.
I'm ready to make a motion. Ready?
You betcha. You
I'd
don't
like
want to
to-
talk about the hospital district? You okay? Okay, go.
I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to move forward with selecting a qualified team and enter into contract to prepare the eligibility report for East Sherman in an amount not to exceed $10,000 from the Planning Department budget this current fiscal year, and partner on funding a portion of the Health Corridor eligibility report by contributing $3,750 from the Planning Department budget this current fiscal year.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Other comments?
One question. What is the time frame again for these reports to come back, and how will the public know what they say and what the, where they'll be available?
So it takes about 2 to 3 months, and I'd be happy to come and present the results of those to the council. I think that would be a great way to do it, and we could make them available on the website as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I'd like to reiterate what Councilwoman Miller said earlier, that this does not commit us to forming a district, but it does provide us with some guidance as we move forward to make some of these important decisions coming up in the future.
I will be shocked if you do not create the districts. Mr. President, I have another question for Hillary. Now that council has made a motion to move forward with this, the estimated price of the East Sherman report is between $9,000 and $10,000. Have you received any bids, or has anyone connected with this project received any bids or, I don't know, offers for people to do the eligibility report?
So for the health corridor area, so Nicole Kaler at CDA 2030 contacted 3. So Panhandle Area Council, Cushlan and Associates out of Boise, and then I think it's Jay Foster out of Southern Idaho. And then after we had that information, we thought, well, we should probably know kind of ballpark for East Sherman. So Cushlan was the higher one for the health corridor. So she contacted Cushlan, and they provided the price range for the East Sherman one. So we know that that's kind of the high end of the.
Have you chosen a consultant?
That has not been selected yet, so.
Will you choose a consultant based on the lowest bid?
No, I think that would be the most qualified and the one that's able to do this in kind of the time frame.
I know
Performance
that
factor.
Phil Cushlan did a report for LCDC regarding the Atlas Mill site. So are we going to be transparent here, or is this already a done deal for the consultant?
No, I think the recommendation would be probably to use Cushlan and Associates for this one, just
Even though he
because
had
of-
the highest bid and he's not even in the area.
Well, we had worked with PAC on the one for Atlas, or at least Ignite worked with them. So I think everyone's getting opportunities on these projects, so.
Opportunities, but we're spending public money here. Shouldn't we be frugal with public money and take the lowest qualifying bid? It sounds to me like,
You know,
I'm
those
going to say it,
professional
the
services.
skids are greased.
The
And it's this guy who everyone knows, who's their pal, who's going to come in here with his $10,000 bid with travel and do his report. I mean, this doesn't seem fair. And again, this whole thing is non-transparent. It pops up on the agenda on Thursday. It's not in Idaho code. There's nothing in Idaho code. Yes, we can do anything we want. And it's not it doesn't say we can't do it. So all of a sudden we're going to do it. But yet, it is non-transparent. There's no way in hell I could support this. I would support having a meeting to discuss the master plan. You know, I would support giving council some options. I thought we were running this city, but apparently we're not. Apparently 2030 is running the city, and so is the hospital district, because they're the ones who said, let's go ahead and do urban renewal, when the 2030 plan said, here's 4 options to fund the Sherman Gateway. Well, not only have we chosen the first option, and we're going ahead and going for it, but we've also pre-selected the person who's going to do the eligibility report.
May I interrupt? Dan, she just said they have not selected. You're making strong accusations in a public forum.
Yeah, I know what I'm doing because I've been watching these people for a long time, and I know how they work, and I'm after transparency, and this is completely opaque, and I cannot support something that's been so opaque. I will not, and I can stand by what I said, and you know, it will surprise the hell out of me if someone else is chosen, if they go with the lowest bidder, because this thing, the skids are greased on this. It's going to happen. Council's going to create the urban renewal districts. And in the hottest economy of the 21st century, we are going to be handing buckets of cash to developers who, in the staff report, are waiting for public money to finish their projects. That's the best use of government money this council thinks is wrong.
Thanks, Dan. Ron? Peek? All right, our piece has been said.
May I clarify something?
Yes, you may.
Okay. In terms of the commercial property owners and the investors and entrepreneurs, they're not just waiting to see if it's urban renewal. They want to see the master plan, they want to see that the city's committed with that we're going to change the zoning, and then they want to see what the funding sources are. So they're not just waiting for buckets of money, just to clarify that.
Further, I had this question. Professional services agreement with most of the stuff we contract with aren't to the lowest bidder. They're to the person who's the most qualified for the professional service that's being provided, and that's a state code. So whether it's this person or some other person, a low bid process on this type of thing would be inappropriate, I would think. And I also think that there's multiple players here that are trying to move the ball forward so the council does have all the information, so that the community has all the information about what options are available, and we got to get that on paper somehow. The other thing is, I think there's been a lot of people, CDA 2030 has posted this, there's been a lot of people involved in this technical assistance program and the outreach that what happened on the medical corridor. And so I'm questioning I'm with you on a lot of things, Dan, but I'm not sure this was opaque. I think that if you were involved, if you have something to do with the medical community, it even came up during some of the Atlas public meetings, what was going on with the medical corridor versus medical buildings being put at the Atlas site. So it's been in the community conversation, and I think planning has pushed it out. I would love to see a report come back and say, yeah, one of these districts isn't eligible, or it's not eligible in that size for an urban renewal district to take place. I would love to have that information to be able to weigh it positively and be done by a party who was objective and professional about providing it. So I think this is a piece that needs to be addressed one way or another, and if this is the Project Point entity, because we've been involved with it, then I think you're obligated to move the ball forward, and we are working within the statute. So I can't see that this is creating a district. This is creating a necessary piece of data that all entities involved in these things need to have in front of them. So I hope that it's posted, and I hope that the information about it, it's available and public, and I'm confident it will be.
Chairman McEvers, I'd like you to call for the question.
Roll call vote.
All right, all those agree?
No, roll call vote, please.
Ames, why don't you knock it down and leave Dan for last?
Oh, yeah,
No.
yeah. Let me be the punctuation.
English?
Yes.
Edinger?
No.
Miller?
Yes?
McEvers?
No.
Gookin?
Absolutely not.
Evans, sorry.
Yes.
So what do we got, Ames?
No tiebreaker.
We have a tie.
Well, could you read the votes again?
Certainly. English, yes. Edinger, no. Miller, yes. McEvers, no. Gookin, no. Evans, yes.
Okay, then the noes have it.
Are you finished, Wood? I don't know. Are we done?
Yeah, if there's a tie, then it would die
Would die.
tonight.
But I don't, well, okay, but hold your applause. I don't want this to die. I said I want to see something done here. So I would like to make a motion. This is what I was going to say earlier. I'd like a motion to direct staff to hold a workshop on the future development of East Sherman and the hospital area. I would like them to invite all interested parties so that we can hear from everyone. And I would like to hold this meeting, if we can, in the evening and televise it so that we can be as transparent as possible. So that does not preclude council that the decision here will not move forward. It's just that I would like to supply everyone with more information. And that's the purpose of my motion.
Second.
What do you think of that?
We can do that.
Can
It
you-
may be a little more challenging for the Kootenai one, since I know they were wanting to move forward, but with an eligibility report. But,
Can you pull that off, you think?
yeah, we can certainly do a workshop, absolutely.
What would the then outcome of the
If you want to
workshop be?
discuss my motion, you need to second it.
Ron seconded.
Oh, you did? Okay,
We
good.
have
I'm
a
sorry.
second.
I didn't hear that.
It's all
Sorry.
right.
It's all
So what-
wound up. Settle down.
Yeah, I
Dan.
know. I'm
Settle
on
down.
fire here.
What would the outcome of the workshop be? To finalize the result?
What I just want to do is I want to slow the thing down so we can all have time to breathe on this, and so that Hillary and Nicole and whoever's involved with East Sherman, you mentioned a consultant's name, the hospital, so that we could all get together and we can discuss what's the big picture here, and have a chance to offer questions and answers and get some input and stuff, so that we can see, like I said, there's 4 funding options for East Sherman. Let's talk about them. Let's talk about what would work best and get some feedback from council. And then if at that time, if council determines, and I reserve the right to change my mind, if council determines at that time that maybe we do some kind of urban renewal district, then that would give us more information to make that decision. But I just think that this was not enough information here.
So the workshop is to determine whether we should do an urban renewal district, or are we going to discuss what we just discussed, which is ask staff to conduct an eligibility report on these 2 areas?
It may end in that, but what I want is I want the information that they have, that I don't have, that you talked about, that you said that there were people in the hospital district that were talking about, we need to do something. I want to hear all that. And I don't have that information right now. And I know Hillary's done a lot of work on East Sherman. I mean, I saw those things that were in your office, those photos and everything. And I just would like an opportunity to look at all that and evaluate what the situation is. And council doesn't have to support this, but I think that with the 2030 plan, East Sherman and the hospital are 2 things we should look at. I would just like to look at them in more detail.
Dan?
I'm all for more information, and that would be fine. And at the risk of, kind of laying extra burden on our planning staff, is I just think that if we do this, we should break them apart, because the areas of town are so different, the dynamics of it and everything, and, the whole hospital thing, and I know a lot of their stuff is based on, job creation and that whole kind of thing. So it just seems like, other than the timing, that if somebody was going to look at them at the same time, that makes sense. But in terms of trying to, have one meeting that tries to evaluate both of them. I mean, it's apples and oranges, I think. So again, I'm for any kind of a process like that, but I wouldn't try to combine those two areas.
How does that,
Does that work with
as far
you,
as your
Hal?
work is concerned, is it more work to do two, or would you rather do one, or is it less work to do two?
It's probably easier to coordinate two separate ones, just realistically, kind of with the players and with the content. I think that that's true. Obviously, that would spread them out a little bit further.
So we could do the hospital first if you said they're more eager to get.
They are. I don't know that they don't have the master planning level of detail, but at least they could give you the background and kind of their
I would
plan
value
and
that.
present the TAP findings and all that. Okay.
So I'll modify my motion to say to hold workshops.
Okay.
And then you can divvy that up, if Ron's okay with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Just so that we're not, I'm sorry to belabor this, so that we're not having a workshop to determine if we, as a council, want to consider forming an urban renewal district. We're having a workshop for more information on the master planning process and if it should include an eligibility study. Is that what our workshop is going to be conducted over?
I would like that.
Hillary, one other question. You held up a piece of paper when you started the hospital, a report. We haven't seen that.
I don't know if that's been, we'll email it out to you. I know it's been distributed in different ways to the community, but I'll make sure you guys get a copy of that.
Anything else?
It's good.
Amy?
Nope.
So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks for bearing with us, eh?
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Let's take a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
Be back in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I got to get some tequila.
Okay, we are back in session. We'll move on to our public hearings. The first public hearing we have is a quasi-judicial hearing, ZC 118. The applicant is Joseph Hamilton, Pilgrim's Market, a proposed zone change from R17 to C17 at 1315 and 1325 North 5th. Being a quasi-judicial hearing, I will ask the council, does any member of the council have a conflict?
I am a Pilgrim's frequent flyer.
And no conflict, okay? And so I do have a sign-up sheet. We'll get to that for public testimony, and we have Sean here that is going to give a presentation. Have at it, Sean.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Widmeyer and City Council. Tonight before you is a public hearing for a zone change, as mentioned. Mr. Hamilton is requesting a zone change of property in city limits that is adjacent to and partially including his existing business Pilgrim's Market from R17 to C17.
That's it?
Taking a breath. So on May 8th, 2018, Planning Commission unanimously voted 5-0 recommending approval of the zone change to City Council for their consideration. Here is a location map. As you can see, Walnut Avenue on the north side, Spokane on the south side, and 5th Street on the east side. Pilgrim's Market is located along 4th Street here. A portion of it does extend into the R17. It's been many, many years that that building has been that way, and also some commercial parking back here as well. So a portion of the property has been used commercially for a number of years. There are 4 findings that need to be made for a zone change to be approved. I'll move through those right now. Finding B8 is that the proposal is or is not in conformance with the comprehensive plan. As far as the comprehensive plan goes, this property falls right on the line of 2 of our land use areas, Appleway North 4th Street and Northeast Prairie. The information has been provided in your staff report. Rather than belabor those, I will just move along and show you what those maps are. Here is the location, as you can see. In Appleway North 4th, the property is in stable established. Also is in, let me get to the next one here. Oh. Northeast Prairie and Appleway North 4th Street. So here you can see the subject property right here along the edge. The comprehensive plan objectives have been provided for you as well. Community design, efficiency, business image and diversity, neighborhoods, city services, and public participation. I'd like to thank the members of the public that have waited this long. I'd like to give them thanks for waiting this out. Finding B9 is that the public facilities and utilities are or are not available and adequate for the proposed use. City staff has provided comments in your staff report. Suffice it to say that the utilities are available to the site and adequate. Finding B10, that the physical characteristics of the site do or do not make it suitable for the request at this time. The site is flat and there is numerous C17 uses in the area. We'll move to some pictures right now. As you can see, this is the portion of the southeast corner that has been used commercial for quite some time. There's a commercial parking lot that supports the business. Here is moving north along 5th Street. Here's the existing home and the hoop house that was approved in 2015 under a special use permit.
What was the special use permit specifically?
It was, it was for community education, and there was one more piece to it. What it does is it allows a market garden. And our code didn't speak directly to that, so our code says you find the closest fit and make it work, so that's what we did.
Was this where that house burned down?
Actually, the house was right here next to that. That's where this picture is, right here. Okay. The applicant can probably speak a little more to that than I can, but my understanding is the house that was acquired that did burn down was on the corner.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. As So finding B11 is that the proposal would or would not adversely affect the surrounding neighborhood with regard to traffic, neighborhood character, and or existing land uses. Our city engineer, Chris Bosley, said that the traffic could be handled and that the capacity is there. Here is a picture across the street of some single-family houses. There is, in your staff report, it talks about where the commercial corridor is. I think Joe, if he if he does the same presentation that he did at Planning Commission, he'll explain the commercial corridor a little more than staff has. Okay, so the zone, this is the land use map here showing what the land uses are. So most of this is commercial. We have Runge's Furniture directly to the west. To the south is the Goodwill building. We have some, and everything on the east side of 5th Street is single family or duplex as described in the staff report. The zoning map as well, everything east of 5th Street is R12. That is a definite line in the sand, if you will, of where the residential zone is. Commercial along 4th Street, and that travels all the way down through Midtown and up to I-90. So there's some description in here of what a C17 district is. Staff will always tell you when a zone change comes forward and provide you in your staff report of all the uses that are allowed in C17 to make you aware that this may not be Pilgrim's Market forever, and any one of those uses at some point may come into play. And here's a list of some of those uses. So the decision point, as read earlier, is whether or not council will approve R17 zoning to C17. And proper legal notice was provided, and City Council will need to consider this request and make the appropriate findings to approve, deny, or deny without prejudice. That will end my staff report, and if you have any questions, staff is here for you.
Questions for Sean this time? Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What about parking?
Parking. They do actually meet their parking requirement as it currently exists. If they do expand, they would need to add some parking. It's largely due to the fact that even though most of the people like to park along 4th Street, there is a lot of parking that does exist behind this building. It's largely used for their staff, their employees at this time. It's just, it's not in the minds of the people that shop there to go behind the building and park there, but the parking is available.
So they're up to current code with regards to number of spaces for a facility that size?
They are.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions for Sean? Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the applicant's presentation. I'll invite the applicant up.
Thanks. My name's Joe Hamilton.
And we will have Amy swear you in.
I do. Thank you, Sean, for the thorough work that you've done to prepare the presentation, and good evening to all of you and the City Council, and to all the residents in the audience that have shown up in support and taken interest in the development of our beautiful city. Firstly, I wanted to reiterate, granted a special use permit by the Planning Committee in 2015 for a market garden on one of the 3 lots in question tonight, and was again recommended by the Planning Committee for this rezone for all the lots tonight. Secondly, I would like to elaborate on why I think my request conforms to the city's comprehensive plan, although I'm a little cautious of bringing that up again this evening, but I think it's appropriate. And finally, I would like to demonstrate how my request is consistent with prior precedent regarding lots between 4th and 5th Street in our region. I believe that my rezone request conforms to the general nature of the first 3 categories of goals of the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. Regarding natural environment, the general goal supports policies that preserve the beauty of our natural environment and enhance the beauty of Coeur d'Alene. Gardens are just beautiful, and somehow comforting and create a strong sense of place. Objective 1.06 addresses preservation of urban forests. I assume that this is intended to preserve beauty, but perhaps it's also intended for greenhouse gas remediation. And I would note that gardens are intense hotspots for that activity. Regarding natural environment, this general goal supports policies that preserve the beauty of our Second one here. Regarding economic environment, this general goal aims to promote opportunities for economic growth. The market garden associated with this rezoning request is an economic engine for our community. Pilgrim's Market already employs nearly 90 people, providing nearly $2.5 million in wages each year. And this zone change will create even more jobs. Beyond jobs, as of April 1, 2018, Pilgrims has directly given $246,973 since we opened in 1999 to local nonprofit organizations. Regarding home environment, this goal seeks to preserve the qualities that make Coeur d'Alene a great place to live. Who doesn't like to look at a lovely garden? There's a groundswell of home gardening in our community, and this market garden is just a logical extension of those well-recognized and community-supported activities. Objective 3.08 and 3.09 aims to emphasize pedestrian orientation and to create beauty, safety, and value when planning neighborhood preservation and revitalization. And I think that all pedestrians enjoy looking at beautiful garden, as well as gardens are somehow comforting. In this image, you can see a beautiful sculpture that we've actually already created on the lot. That was previously known for housing the ugly house that did burn down, that was sort of known as the neighborhood meth house. So it burned down, and we put a garden there and put up this beautiful sort of public art. I would also like to point out that in regards to our prior special use permit application, 3 local nonprofit organizations, the Inland Northwest Food Network, the Kootenai Environmental Alliance, and Link Foods had previously provided a statement of support for our gardening and educational efforts. I thought I would also update you on the progress we've made on our garden since approval of that special use permit. We've now completed construction of our 36 by 60 foot hoop house, and we are growing 170 tomatoes, 200 peppers, a variety of chilies inside the greenhouse, and our row crops. We've already begun, we've actually already made several harvests this year. We have 400 heads of lettuce, 50 feet of spinach, 25 feet of beets, radish, kale, and arugula. And I'm sure you're all hungry this late in the evening. Not only has this special use permit helped us create more jobs, but we're specifically designing the foods we grow to minimize competing with other local suppliers of ours. Another part of our vision is to design a very educational and interactive field trips for a variety of school-age students. We plan on beginning the field trips with a presentation in our education center, followed by research activities in our produce department, and then with a hands-on portion in the garden. The research portion is already complete since we've created educational wall art a couple years ago. We chose the plight of the bumblebee and the colony collapse issues as a means to illustrate the value of environmental stewardship. The garden portion will address gardening skills, of course, but also environmental biology topics like organic, inorganic, living elements of healthy soil composition. I think this is a good way for you to see the results of what has already been approved with the special use permit, but to also see how the rezone will only create more positive changes. The special use permit allowed for the residential lot to be used for gardening and educational group assembly, but since then I've envisioned a sublime natural outdoor dining experience for customers of Pilgrim's Market. Wouldn't it be great to be able to meet your family and friends for a juice or salad bar and to dine in the garden where much of the food was actually made? Years ago on a trip to Napa Valley, I had the pleasure of grabbing a warm loaf of French bread, some gourmet cheese, and some wine inside of a winery, and was able to enjoy an amazing picnic there amidst the vineyard and friends. It's a memory that has stuck with me for over 20 years. And I want this zone change to allow for many similar memories for residents and visitors to our beautiful city. As you can see from this picture, most of the property, this really is similar to what Sean showed you. Where's my mouse? Oh, here we go. Here is the zone change request properties, Goodwill for Orientation, Runge Furniture. My image just goes a little bit beyond Sean's. I think his stopped right about here. But as you can see, moving forward, there has been a precedent set of what looks to be at least half, if not the majority of the property in between 4th and 5th, yet bordering 5th Street. Much of that has already been zoned commercial. And I hope you agree that this use will, resulting from the zone change, in this case, will be consistent with the comprehensive plan as well. Finally, here is an initial draft of the next generation of the garden as I see it, and the outdoor dining where it spans all of the lots in question, and completely closes off access to 5th Street. So Pilgrim's Market is right here. This is Spokane Street here and where our parking is. This is 5th Street along here, and this is Walnut. And our plan is to completely close off access to this space from those residential streets for 2 reasons. One, to sort of minimize people walking into, our property in the garden and grazing perhaps, but also to ultimately sort of minimize traffic and activity on the adjoining residential street there. The plan is for staff to be, and customers to only enter from, or I should say through the store, okay? So employees working on the property would gain access from the existing parking lot, and customers would come through the store to be able to sort of dine in the picnic area really during the summer months, that sort of thing. Is it okay if I read a letter shared with me from a resident who wasn't able to make it here this evening?
You bet.
And asked me to share it?
You can go ahead and do that.
So this is what she sort of dictated to me earlier. She said, "My name is Lee Ray, and I was a planning and zoning commissioner for the city of Coeur d'Alene in the 1980s and finished in 1992. I became aware of this rezone request, and I see no problems for the request. The store provides healthy products and food. Pilgrims has always been aware of the surroundings and careful not to infringe on neighbors, and in fact, highly improved the area after Liquidation World left. Pilgrims is highly respectful in all their years of business for their neighboring residents and businesses. I see this as a tremendous opportunity for the customers and community." And really, that's it for me, for myself and our 9 employees at Pilgrims. I say thank you for your consideration.
Questions? Anyone have any questions?
No question, the motion.
Oh, well, we got a little bit more. We got a little more to go here. Dan, did you have?
Yes, I did. Can you tell me, Joe, why you want C-17 and not just another special use permit?
The special use permit would not allow dining.
Oh.
Because that is, it's more associated with the store. And the market garden, there's no dining there. There's an educational component, like I mentioned, with the school projects and who knows what would come down the road. I'm sure local gardening organizations would love to come check it out and that sort of thing. But it's really for the dining.
Okay, so I don't see anything here in the special use permit that would allow dining, so that makes sense.
I don't think so.
I just had one question.
Kiki.
Joe, is there currently on the 5th Street and the other residential side sidewalk that is
Yes.
there? And so what are you planning when you said close it off? I'm
Well,
assuming
just a
it'll be
fence.
Just a fence, so
Just a
that side.
fence.
Okay.
Yeah. So currently there is a driveway. There's 2 driveways because these were 3 residential lots, only 1 home remains. And there is a driveway here and a driveway here. And thus far, we have used this driveway here to sort of, you know, bring in topsoil and that sort of thing. So it has created some activity. But the plan is really to close all that off.
So you'll fence that and then still be responsible to maintain the sidewalk on the other side?
Sure.
That kind of snow removal and such? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Okay. Oh, Ron?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, well, we've got a couple more steps here, Ron, to get through. I'm sorry. We'll get through this process. I think it'll be quick.
I think we're all ready to go home.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So that, thank you very much, and you'll have an opportunity to come back if that is needed.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you very much. Now is the time. Now I'm looking at the list, the sign-up list. Now is the time. If there was an opponent of this project, would have 10 minutes to speak. I'm looking at the list. I don't have anyone that says they're opposed, but I want to offer that opportunity. If there's an opponent to this project in the audience, now would be the time for them to step forward. Seeing none, then we'll move on to other speakers. I have a number of people on this list, and everyone's name will go into the record. I have only one person that had indicated that they had wished to speak. If there's others, we can get to that. But I have Michael Bennett, who is in favor, that wishes to testify. Is Michael here? That would probably be,
Michelle.
I messed that up.
No, it's Michael.
Michael, okay, all right.
Thank you. My name is Michael Bennett. I am a resident of Coeur d'Alene, and I am a former.
Excuse me.
Oh, do I need to be sworn
we need
in?
to swear in.
Do you solemnly swear and/or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I am a former employee at Pilgrim's Market, 7 years marketing director there, and I have had a lot of in-depth experience with the dreams and of the store and of Joe Hamilton and his family and what they want to see accomplished in this community. And I really think that even with all the growth, that they have kept a really deep connection with the community, especially with the employees and how they interact with everyone. And the opportunities that they provided for both community and their employees and just the area in general. And yes, I do agree that it has improved that area dramatically. When we first moved here about 10 years ago, they were just planning on moving into that space, into the liquidation world space. And we had gone into the little store, and when we actually moved here, we were just totally taken back by all the opportunities and everything that they provided in that expansion, and they've just continued to increase that. I've been gone for 3 years, but my husband is currently, I'm a little invested in this, my husband is currently the market garden manager, and I have been able to receive and see on the shelves at Pilgrim's the result of his long and tiring hours working in the garden. And it's beautiful. If you haven't had a chance to drive by and take a look at it, or to buy some radishes or arugula off of the salad bar or in the produce department, I encourage you to do that. It's delicious. But I just want to say that I think that this is just another step in the direction of contributing back to the community in a very special and unique way that I have seen Pilgrims and Joe try to do for the last 10 years. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would wish to testify? Okay, if not, then there is an opportunity if the applicant wants to sum up. I don't know if there's anything you need to sum up. I think we're probably good. So at this time, I will close the public testimony portion of this and look for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to read this into the record.
Okay.
Okay, so this is a letter that we received up here. I don't think any of you have seen it, but we'll put it in the record. No name, just hello, hello. On behalf of many people in the neighborhood, your request for a zone change is frightening. We all wonder how it will affect our property values and our community, traffic, quiet, cleanliness, etc. There have only been a couple positive things in recent years on Fifth Street. The elimination of the meth house and the bear. You guys would probably know about that. Yet, since your appearance, things have deteriorated. With all your street parking, the street does not get its street cleaning, plowing, leaf removal. Plus, driving down the street has become a challenge. And the constant delivery trucks with their traffic and noise and pollution. What's next? Question mark. We all wish you'd stayed on 4th where you belong. Residential property owners on 5th Street, that's how it's signed. So Joe, talk to them, okay?
I have a question for Mike. Is something like that, because it wasn't signed, is that, I guess you can read anything into the record, right? But I guess it troubles me a little bit that it's anonymous, that there's no name attached to it. It's something that we can still do?
Well, it's sort of, the bell's been rung, so it's been read into the record, but yeah, I would say that the weight of that would not be very much.
Being anonymous, yeah. Okay, well, thanks for reading that in, Whit. Now, we will close the public testimony portion of it and look for council action.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Ron?
I'd like to move for Council Bill number 18-1014, approving the proposed zone change from R17 to C17 at 1315 and 1325 North 5th for Joseph Hamilton Pilgrim's Market. I so move.
Okay, we probably need to go, we need to take a step back because we need to dispense with the rules. Renata is a stickler on that. I'm sure Amy is a stickler on that too. So we need to start, would you like to start, Ron, with the motion to dispense with the rules?
Yeah, I'd like to dispense with the rule.
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 18-1014 once by title only. Any discussion on that? Amy, if you could read the title, please.
Do you need me to do the roll call first and then read the title?
Read the title, then roll call. Yeah.
An ordinance amending the zoning act of the city of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, known as ordinance number 1691, ordinances of the city of Coeur d'Alene, by changing the following described property from R17 to C17, said property being described as follows, to wit, 6 existing parcels along the west side of 5th Street between East Walnut Avenue and East Spokane Avenue, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Roll call, please.
Ettinger?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
Evans?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Motion carried. Now, Ron, we'll have the motion.
I'd make a motion to adopt Council Bill number 18-1014.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Woody?
So Joe, something I noticed that I thought was important for you to be aware of is that if when you get old and gray and you go away, this is C17. So it could impact the neighborhood. And it looks like you've been a good neighbor. You're taking care of the backside, and I think that's real important. All the buildings along there that are commercial, all going on up 5th when you were showing us, are almost all, it's like the back door, right? Goodwill, the back door is on 5th. So I always wonder if things start turning around, what it would be like to have frontage across the street from neighbors. And I know that's not your plan, but it's one of those things in the back of my head I'm going. The car dealers have the shops in the back and things like that. So I think you fit in there, and this is totally cool. If you can make it work, man, you've accomplished a lot. So I'm supporting it, but just remember you're C17. You're in the big stuff now, right?
We're planning on your kids
taxes,
taking this
yeah.
over and your
Keep it
grandkid. That's
going.
what we're planning up here.
And we thank you for the tax increase.
Gotta stay this way.
So I think they're ready.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay. Any further discussion? Dan, did you have?
No, I was saying goodbye to Joe.
Okay. So if there isn't any further discussion, roll call, please. Amy?
Ettinger?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
Evans?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you very much. We will move on. This is a
let them do that.
Yeah. Yeah, they had to put up with me, so they can go now.
So this is a legislative hearing, and this is V-18-02, vacation of a portion. These people are not interested in this vacation hearing.
This is important stuff.
I told Dennis yesterday that he was going to have such a huge crowd.
So this is a vacation of a portion of Celtice Way right-of-way adjoining the northeasterly boundary of Lot 3 and 4, Block 1, Glacier Northwest. Dennis Grant.
Here he is. The highlight of the
A fact to
evening.
follow, Dennis.
Yeah, thanks for staying. I'll try to get you out by 10.
You'll be lonely at 10.
Where are we?
Okay. Good evening, council. So I brought this to Public Works a while back, and it was unanimous. We're at Celtice Way and Northwest Boulevard. I'll just kind of circle that. It's a little sliver. It's kind of hard to see. So what we have
So north
here,
is to the left.
Say again?
North, on this map, north is to the left.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it is, basically.
Okay, all right.
All right. So the requested right-of-way was relinquished to the city of Coeur d'Alene through an agreement with the Idaho Transportation Department back in 2004. The vacation of the requested right-of-way would not have any financial impact to the city and would add about 1,986 square feet to the county tax roll. The applicant is Glacier Northwest Boulevard Celtice LLC, and they're the ones making the request. The purpose of this request is to provide for additional developable area on the reference parcel. So with that, staff recommends to the City Council to approve the vacation action per Idaho Code Section 50-1306 and to vacate the property to the applicant, Glacier Northwest Boulevard Celtice LLC. I did send out 4 certified mailers, 0 responses received.
Questions for Dennis? Stan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to tell council, I met with our engineer yesterday, and this is part of that trail. You remember the one that came in over bid? Oh, you guys were on Public Works, so you knew this. I didn't. But this is part of that trail that came in over bid, and this is to clear up some room for that trail, but also just to let you know that kind of switch that goes there. So when you're driving on Celtice and you want to go south on Northwest Boulevard, and you have that road that goes off there, that the future plans for the intersection as ITD is eventually going to remove that. And so there'll be more space there.
They're gonna move it,
They're going to move it, so it won't be as wide. It'll be a much safer intersection.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's planned for the future here, and this doesn't really affect any of that, but I wanted to let you know that's coming down the road. Literally.
Any other questions for Dennis? All right, this is a legislative hearing, so I will open public testimony. I do not have anyone on this list, probably because there's no one left except for the gentleman in the back. And so if there's anyone willing to wanting to testify, they can do so now. Seeing no one, I will close the public testimony and look
Mr.
for
Mayor,
council
I would
action.
like to move to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 181015 by title only.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Amy, if you could read the title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, vacating a portion of the Celtice Way right-of-way, generally described as a parcel of land adjoining the northerly boundary of Lots 3 and Lot 4, Block 1 of the Glacier Northwest Celtice subdivision to the City of Coeur d'Alene, located in the northwest quarter of Section 11, Township 50 North, Range 4 West, Boise Meridian, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Roll call, please.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
Evans?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Edinger?
Motion carried.
Move to adopt Council Bill 181015.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, again.
Miller?
Yes.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yeah.
Evans?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Edinger?
Yes.
Motion carried. We'll move on to our final piece of business for tonight, legislative hearing V-18-03, vacation of right-of-way, the north 41 feet of Block 4, Lot 4, Block 1, Ann's Addition in the city of Coeur d'Alene. Again, this is Dennis Grant.
Okay. The applicant here is Miller Stauffer Architects on behalf of the Kootenai County Board of Commissioners. And the requested right-of-way was originally dedicated to the city of Coeur d'Alene in Ann's Addition plat in 1991. There's a picture on the screen there, which is a vicinity map. It shows you where it's located there at the end of Julia, kind of by the compost facility, right next door to the 911 center. The vacation of the requested right-of-way would not have any financial impact on the city. The purpose of the request is to provide additional developable area on the reference parcel. Public Works approved it unanimously, and staff recommends the City Council to approve the vacation action per Idaho Code Section 50-1306 and to vacate the property to the applicant Miller Stauffer Architects on behalf of the Kootenai County Board of County Commissioners.
All right, questions for Dennis? Seeing no questions for Dennis, we will open the public testimony. Anyone wishing to testify on this matter can come forward and do so. Don't see anyone to do that. We will close the public testimony portion of it and look for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill 181016 by title only.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Amy, if you could read the title, please.
An ordinance of the City of Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County, Idaho, vacating a portion of public right-of-way recorded in Book F, page 351, Records of Kootenai County, generally described as the north 41 feet of Lot 4, Block 1, Ann's Addition in the City of Coeur d'Alene, located in the southwest quarter of Section 2, Township 50 North, Range 4 West, Boise Meridian, repealing all ordinances and parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, and providing for the publication of a summary of this ordinance and an effective date hereof.
Roll call, please.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Edinger?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor, move to adopt Council Bill 181016.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Again, Amy.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yeah.
Evans?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Edinger?
Yep.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Dennis.
To adjourn?
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Good night, Coeur d'Alene.